Chapter 441. When Ing Baihu walked up to the stage, it truly gave everyone a fright. No one had expected that this unknown disciple of the Ing family would possess such strength. Was the strength of the Ing family of Shangshui really that terrifying? Could any random disciple of the Ing family be this powerful? At this moment, on Ing Bailu's side, the old servant who had been silent all this while sighed softly and said, "Eldest young master, second young master is still young. Moreover, he was strictly disciplined by the patriarch when he was young, so his way of thinking is a little extreme." Ing Bailu's expression didn't change in the slightest as he looked at the arena. He said in a gentle voice, "Uncle Fu, I know that. Otherwise, do you think I would give him so many things and give him the opportunity to unite with the Luo clan through marriage? The Ing family has never been strong because of one person, but because of a group of people. Unfortunately, Baihu doesn't know this. But it doesn't matter. Let him hate me. As long as he doesn't cross my bottom line, this hatred can be used as motivation to make him stronger. If he becomes stronger, it means that Shangshui Ing clan has become stronger as well. So why not?" Uncle Fu nodded. "If only the second young master could think like you, then the Ing family will be even more glorious." Ing Baihu was far more broad-minded than Uncle Fu had imagined. Of course, this was also the confidence brought by absolute strength. So what if Ing Baihu hated him? So what if he was jealous of him? Anyway, his younger brother couldn't catch up to him in this life, and he wouldn't be able to catch up to him in the next. He was no threat to him. The infighting and quarrels between brothers in the other clans were all because of the gap between the two sides. One wanted to replace the other, while the other was afraid of being replaced. That was why there was infighting. But the Ing family was different. Was Ing Baihu afraid of being replaced? He was the unparalleled young master peerless. No one in the Ing family could replace him. It was precisely because of this confidence that Ing Bailu allowed Ing Baihu to resent him. In his opinion, Ing Baihu's actions were just like a child throwing a tantrum when he couldn't get his beloved toy. It wasn't a big deal. Of course, if Ing Baihu were to provoke his bottom line again and again, just like what he said just now, then Ing Bailu would have to teach him a lesson so that he would have a good memory. At this moment, on the stage, Ing Baihu's aura was released to the extreme, looking down on everyone. If he did not have the halo of defeating Bailu, he would not be easy to deal with. Perhaps he would have already stepped into Jianghu and made a name for himself in the martial world. He might not be able to beat his own brother, Bailu, but could it be that he couldn't beat the rest of the trash present? "Who's going up the stage?" Ing Baihu coldly shouted as he stared at the crowd below. Everyone present exchanged glances. Actually, anyone could tell that this joust for a spouse was just a show. Since they knew that Ing Bailu was coming, none of them had made any preparations to enter the ring. Now that it was Ing Baihu's turn to go on stage, everyone present was a little eager, but still, no one dared to be the first to go on stage. Although Ing Baihu was inferior to Ing Bailu, and judging from his aura, he should have just stepped into the 5 Chi's origin stage not long ago, the problem was that there were only a few people present who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Ing Baihu. Moreover, no one knew exactly how strong Ing Baihu was, so no one dared to be the first to test him. Seeing that no one was going up the stage, Ing Baihu frowned. His brother, Ing Bailu, had long made a name for himself in Jianghu. It was about time for him to make a name for himself in Jianghu. Ordinary martial artists began to wander Jianghu when they were around the innate stage. Some of the disciples of the major sects almost always reached the inner invulnerability or physical invulnerability. For example, Shen Bai only appeared in Jianghu when he cultivated to the 3 flowers at one's prominent stage, which was considered very late. As for Ing Baihu, he only stepped into Jianghu when he broke through the 5 Chi's origin stage. He wanted to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat and not let the glory of Ing Bailu overshadow him again. Now that it was time to make a move, it was a little awkward that no one went up the stage. Mo Tianlin looked over at Luo Feiheng. At this time, Luo Feiheng had her eyes closed, looking as if she was thinking about something. It was extremely inconsistent with her usual personality. Mo Tianlin said in a low voice, "Feiheng is not ready yet. Brother Chu, you deal with this guy first." Ing Bailu won't go up the stage, so it should be very easy to deal with this guy. Chu Xiu nodded. Just as he was about to get up, he saw Xie Xiaolu blocking in front of him and said, "Brother Chu, you don't have to deal with this kind of person. What if Ing Bailu goes up the stage later, or if someone stronger comes? I'll do it." Xie Xiaolu was still in the three flowers at once prominent stage. Chu Xiu subconsciously wanted to stop him, but at this moment he suddenly thought of something. He glanced at Xie Xiaolu with the heaven's sun gazing at air and asked in surprise, "You're about to take that step?" Xie Xiaolu smiled and said, "Although I'm not as early as you, Brother Chu, I've been in the three flowers at once prominent stage for a long time. It's about time for me to make a breakthrough. I can use this opportunity to hone myself." On the side, Mo Tianlin couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he heard this. He was good friends with Xie Xiaolu. Now that Xie Xiaolu was about to step into the five Qis origin stage, he naturally wouldn't be jealous. However, he still felt a little jealous. Anyway, he was still a little far from this stage. He hadn't even touched the threshold. As Xie Xiaolu went up the stage, Luo Jiunyan and Luo Tianyang's faces darkened. They knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others were here to cause trouble. They all knew the relationship between Xie Xiaolu and Luo Feiheng. Because of this, they knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others would not marry Luo Feiheng. But now, they still wanted to go up the stage. If this wasn't causing trouble, then what was? However, even if they knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others were here to cause trouble, it was useless. The stage was right there. Could the Luo family stop people from going up? Ing Bailu looked at Xie Xiaolu and asked, "Who is this person?" Uncle Fu said softly, "He is Xie Xiaolu, the disciple of Qinqing Di from the World Alliance. He is ranked 14th on the Longhu leaderboard." At this moment, Ing Bailu really didn't know who Xie Xiaolu was. It wasn't because he was arrogant, but because Ing Bailu had been famous for a long time. Moreover, it had been a long time since Ing Bailu appeared in the Jianghu. At that time, Xie Xiaolu was ranked outside the top 20. Naturally, Ing Bailu had never heard of his name. Ing Bailu nodded and said, "So you're Emperor Qinqing's disciple. The World Alliance's Emperor Qinqing is quite a character. My father once said that there are countless cultivators in the world who are born in the wilderness, but those who can achieve what Emperor Qinqing has done are as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Since this Xie Xiaolu is a disciple of Qinqing Di, he should not be weak. It's just that his realm is lower than white tigers. Don't worry about this round." There were countless examples of a three-flower realm cultivator defeating a five Qis origin realm cultivator in the Jianghu, but it also depended on who the opponent was. The disciples of the Shangshui Ying family had always defeated those stronger than them. It would be shameful if they were challenged by someone who was a higher realm than them. At this time, Ing Baihu saw Xie Xiaolu come onto the stage. He immediately snorted coldly, and the gang qi around his body suddenly exploded. He threw a punch, and the ink-colored gang qi rose with the wind, lingering around his body, and turned into a dragon's roar as it smashed towards Xie Xiaolu's head. Ing Baihu was prepared to make a name for himself in the Jianghu this time. For him, it didn't matter who his opponent was. What he needed to do was to defeat any opponent that appeared in front of him, and then marry Luo Feiheng. Step by step, he would take back what was rightfully his. Xie Xiaolu frowned. The people of the Shangshui Ying family were indeed not simple. Even if this Ing Baihu was just a nobody in the Jianghu, the power of his attack was far beyond that of an ordinary five Qis origin realm cultivator. The floating feather blade on Xie Xiaolu's back was unsheathed. The blade's edge was extremely cold, and the incomparably sharp blade momentum tore through the gang qi. It seemed light, but its power was not weak either. In an instant, the long blade in Xie Xiaolu's hand slashed out countless astral blades. His blade momentum was incomparably fast, his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the sky-covering astral blades had already surrounded Ing Baihu. But right at this moment, a violent dragon roar rang out from Ing Baihu's body. Countless pitch-black astral energy coiled around him, transforming into the shape of a dragon. Like a soaring dragon, it roared through the heavens and earth. A series of loud sounds rang out as the countless astral saber beams shattered. Under such a powerful force, Xie Xiaolu's figure could not help but retreat. However, at this time, Ying Baihu formed a seal with both hands. As the seal descended, the Gang Qi condensed into the shape of a dragon. The powerful momentum seemed to be able to crush the heavens and earth, and its power increased by 30%. Everyone present had heard of this move before. It was a secret skill of the imperial heavenly treasure record of the Shangshui Ying family, the coiling dragon seal. It was said that the power of this seal could shatter the heavens and split the earth, and it was extremely powerful. Xie Xiaolu gritted his teeth. This guy's strength was a bit too excessive. At this moment, he was already half a step into the 5 Qi's origin realm, but in terms of power, he was still suppressed to the extreme by Ying Baihu. After retreating, the floating feather blade in Xie Xiaolu's hand blossomed with a deep cold light. As the blade slashed down, the blade light seemed to condense into the shape of a phoenix's feather. It seemed to be falling gently and slowly, but its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Ying Baihu. At this moment, Ying Baihu stretched out a hand, and powerful astral energy condensed in his hand. A black dragon claw grabbed Xie Xiaolu's saber, and a loud bang resounded. The saber energy and saber astral energy were destroyed by Ying Baihu's claw. Even the floating feather saber in Xie Xiaolu's hand couldn't endure the powerful force and was blasted away. Just when everyone thought that Xie Xiaolu was easily defeated by Ying Baihu, Xie Xiaolu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He condensed the Gang Qi around his body into a fist. It was such a simple fist, but the fist intent was extremely powerful. Under this fist, either the world's rivers and mountains will fall into my hands, or 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers will be destroyed by my fist. The fist intent of this punch was extremely tyrannical and terrifying. Ying Baihu didn't seem to be affected by this punch, but Xie Xiaolu's perlicue was already bleeding. Because this was not the fist intent that Xie Xiaolu could currently grasp, but the fist intent that belonged to his master, Qinqing Di. 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers like a painting, fist-shattering mountains and rivers suppression. Chapter 442. Qinqing Di's name shook the Jianghu, but no one knew what kind of cultivation technique he practiced. Because Qinqing Di was born in the wilderness, the cultivation techniques he practiced were too varied. But now, it was no longer important what kind of cultivation technique Qinqing Di practiced. The people of the Jianghu only knew that Qinqing Di's fist was very strong. It was a fist intent that could suppress mountains and rivers, shatter mountains and break rivers. This kind of powerful fist intent was condensed by Qinqing Di after experiencing countless battles and tribulations. It was a fist intent that belonged to him alone, so Xie Xiaolu could not completely inherit it. Because of this, as a disciple of Qinqing Di, Xie Xiaolu used a saber, not a fist technique. But although Xie Xiaolu used a saber, it did not mean that he did not know Qinqing Di's fist. It was just that although Qinqing Di had shown him this fist intent, with Xie Xiaolu's experience and understanding of the martial Tao, he was unable to fully display this fist intent. Even if he forced himself to display it, he would not be able to injure others, but he would still be injured, and the backlash would not be small. But at this time, the complexion of his opponent, Ying Baihu, had already changed. Xie Xiaolu's fist blasted out, the powerful fist intent stirred up all the astral energy in his body, and even the surrounding world's origin qi retreated. This was the first time Ying Baihu felt a threat from Xie Xiaolu, an extremely powerful threat. Along with this pressure, Ying Baihu roared, and the astral energy around his body faintly condensed into the shape of a dragon, roaring to the heavens and the earth, turning into a black dragon that attached itself to his body. At this moment, behind Ying Baihu, there seemed to be a figure of a dragon and a human figure intertwined, and as he blasted out his fist, it suppressed the mountains and rivers of the myriad worlds. Whether it was Qinqing Di's fist intent or Ying Baihu's fist, both were fierce and overbearing to the extreme. When the two fists collided, an incomparably powerful might burst out, shaking the entire arena to the point of cracking. At this moment, everyone's expressions changed slightly. Ying Baihu's strength had exceeded their expectations. Even Xie Xiaolu's strength had reached such a level. This was even more unexpected. Below, Mo Tianlin looked at the commotion on the field and felt a bit upset. He was not jealous of Xie Xiaolu, but he was blaming himself for not living up to expectations. In the past, when he met Xie Xiaolu, the difference in strength between them wasn't that big. Xie Xiaolu was a bit stronger than him, but there was a limit to how much stronger he was. Later, Mo Tianlin also met Luo Feihong. However, in his opinion, a woman like Luo Feihong who was stronger than a man was simply abnormal. There was no way he could compare himself with her. He did not want to compare himself with Luo Feihong. Later on, he got to know Chu Xiu, who was even more abnormal than Luo Feihong. He was an existence that could compete with the top 5 geniuses on the Dragon and Tiger list. Comparing himself to Chu Xiu was simply asking for trouble. But now, Mo Tianlin discovered that even Xie Xiaolu, whom he had always thought to be on par with him, had already surpassed him. At least, he didn't even have the courage to resist Xie Xiaolu's fist. This made Mo Tianlin somewhat depressed. Chu Xiu looked at Mo Tianlin's appearance and couldn't help but shake his head. Brother Mo, your personality is like this. You like to enjoy life. In fact, you don't need to deliberately compare yourself with others. Just be yourself. Otherwise, if you force yourself to cultivate, not only will it not bring you any benefits, it will also lead to a bottleneck in your heart. Regarding Mo Tianlin's personality, Chu Xiu could be considered to be quite familiar. Mo Tianlin really wasn't the kind of person who was suited to fight in the wind and rain of Jianghu. Just look at the things that Mo Tianlin liked to do. He liked to enjoy wine, he liked to write poems and songs. The only things that he didn't like were cultivation and martial arts. Moreover, Mo Tianlin's strength was actually very ordinary. The reason why he was able to step into the Dragon and Tiger list was because he was dumped by a woman. Because of this, he started to cultivate crazily in a moment of anger, which resulted in his current strength. Therefore, it could be said that Mo Tianlin was a person with talent. The only thing that he lacked was a heart that specialized in martial arts. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Mo Tianlin smiled bitterly and said, Brother Chu is right, I'm a bit too stubborn. However, I really need to cultivate harder during this period of time. Otherwise, not only will I be completely left behind by you, I reckon that I won't even be able to keep my position in the Mo clan. Currently, Mo Tianlin was the successor of the Mo clan. In fact, Mo Tianlin didn't really care much about this so-called successor. Because of this, the gap between him and the other younger generation of the Mo clan wasn't too big. Many of the younger generation of the Mo clan coveted his position. Although Mo Tianlin didn't care about this position, he knew that if someone else took his position, then he might not be able to enjoy the things that he currently enjoyed in the future. At this time, Xie Xiaolu and Ying Baihu exchanged blows. Under the violent fluctuations, the smoke and dust dispersed. Ying Baihu's complexion was deathly pale, while Xie Xiaolu's mouth was already bleeding. Even his right arm was slightly trembling. Clearly, the injury wasn't light. Ying Baihu's eyes revealed a trace of anger and humiliation. After the exchange, it was obvious that Ying Baihu won, but his victory was somewhat forced. He originally planned to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, but now, facing Xie Xiaolu, whose strength was far inferior to his, he was in such a sorry state. This was clearly different from what he had planned. Just when Ying Baihu was about to attack again, Xie Xiaolu, who was facing him, directly said, I admit defeat. Xie Xiaolu's 3 words were said without the slightest hesitation. He was only here to stall for time and temper his own strength. There was no need for him to fight Ying Baihu to the death. Ying Baihu, who was about to attack, paused again. This caused his face to turn red. In the end, he could only coldly snort and withdraw his step. Luo Junyan stood up and said in a deep voice, Is there anyone else who wants to go up? Everyone present looked at each other. With the strength that Ying Baihu had displayed just now, who would dare to go up and court death? Especially since Ying Baihu seemed to be in a fit of anger. His attacks were quite ruthless. If they went up now, wouldn't they be helping him vent his anger? Let me. Chu Xiu had a smile on his face as he walked up the stage step by step. Luo Junyan narrowed his eyes as he looked at Chu Xiu. He knew that this group of people would definitely come out to cause trouble. But unexpectedly, Luo Junyan didn't care. He just looked deeply at Chu Xiu and walked down the stage. Previously, Luo Junyan was cheated by the Ying clan's people. He was also a veteran of the Jianghu for so many years. How could he not have any thoughts? If Chu Xiu wanted to cause trouble, then let him cause trouble. If Chu Xiu lost, Luo Feiheng would be able to marry into the Ying clan normally. If Chu Xiu won, then could Ying Bailu just watch as his younger brother was defeated and not make a move? If Ying Bailu made a move, Chu Xiu would lose without a doubt. At that time, Luo Feiheng would be able to marry Ying Bailu smoothly, killing two birds with one stone. Luo Junyan also thought of the worst outcome. The Ying clan would sit and watch as Ying Baihu was defeated by Chu Xiu, and Ying Bailu wouldn't make a move. But that didn't matter. At most, the Luo clan wouldn't marry into the Ying clan. Although the Luo clan's actions were somewhat untrustworthy, going back on their words in the end after agreeing to hold a martial arts competition for a spouse, in the pugilistic world, things like trustworthiness were just words. Even if the Luo clan were to publicly act shamelessly and refuse to marry off their daughter, what could Chu Xiu do to them? On the stage, Chu Xiu glanced at Ying Baihu and said, "Although you aren't seriously injured, you're a little exhausted. I won't take advantage of you, lest others say that I'm taking turns fighting you. Rest for a while first, then I'll make a move." As soon as these words came out, the crowd immediately felt that this Chu Xiu was quite considerate. He knew not to take advantage of others when they were down. But below, Nie Donglu looked at Chu Xiu with a frown. As the saying goes, the person who understands you the most is usually not a friend, but an enemy. Nie Donglu and Chu Xiu were enemies, and it wasn't just a day or two. So he clearly knew what kind of person Chu Xiu was. It wasn't too much to say that he was unscrupulous. Since when did Chu Xiu's character become so noble? Under normal circumstances, he should be hitting someone when they're down. So Nie Donglio's intuition told him that there was definitely something fishy going on. But he couldn't guess what Chu Xiu was thinking. On the stage, Ying Baihu took a deep look at Chu Xiu, then sat cross-legged on the ground to recover his internal energy. Chu Xiu was different from Xie Xiaolu. He was also at the Five Qis origin stage. When Ying Baihu was still in seclusion in the Shangshui Ying clan, Chu Xiu was already fighting with experts at the unity of heaven and man realm. And on the Longhu list, Chu Xiu was only after his brother defeated Bailu. Facing such an opponent, Ying Baihu couldn't help but be cautious. Of course, at the same time, Ying Baihu was also a little excited. As long as he could defeat Chu Xiu face to face, he would be ranked 6th on the Longhu list. He would be one step closer to his brother's position. About a quarter of an hour later, Ying Baihu stood up. His breathing had completely calmed down. Chu Xiu held the saber in his hand and asked, "Is it done?" Ying Baihu nodded his head. But just as Ying Baihu nodded, Chu Xiu's saber had already been unsheathed. Boundless demonic energy intertwined with the baleful blood energy. The saber light of dozens of zhang almost penetrated the entire stage. When the saber slashed down, the demonic might was monstrous. The might of Chu Xiu's saber was simply terrifying. Even the move that Ying Baihu and Xie Xiaolu used just now couldn't compare to Chu Xiu's saber. Even after seeing this saber, Ying Baihu, who was sitting below, suddenly sat up straight and said in a deep voice, "He lost. Baihu has already lost. Who is this Chu Xiu?" Uncle Fu said in a deep voice behind Ying Baihu, "This kid came from the underworld. I heard that he was a rogue cultivator and an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society. Finally, he joined the Guanzhong torture room and became the Guanxi torture room. His momentum on the Longhu list is like a hot knife cutting through butter. He is a dark horse and not a simple character. Second young master's chances of winning this time are indeed not high." Chapter 443. Xie Xiaolu and Chu Xiu both used sabers, but Ying Baihu could block Xie Xiaolu's saber, while Chu Xiu's saber was something Ying Baihu didn't even have the courage to block. Under the roaring saber aura, Ying Baihu's first choice was to retreat, and block. The black astral energy around his body condensed into the shape of a dragon, coiling around him. As Chu Xiu's saber aura slashed down, The black astral energy was torn apart, and the powerful demonic qi entered his body. Baihu immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and a look of shock appeared in his eyes. This was a complete suppression in terms of strength. Both sides were not on the same level. No matter how Baihu tried to block, it was useless. Bailu shook his head and said, "Baihu's combat experience is too little. In the family, Uncle Fu and the others have been feeding him moves, but you've never dealt a fatal blow. Similarly, Baihu also knows that you won't deal a fatal blow to him. Now that he's fighting with someone, he subconsciously chose the safest way to deal with it. He doesn't know that this is the biggest taboo in a battle between cultivators. My Ying clan's royal heavenly treasure records is firm and imposing, advancing with indomitable will. Now that he's choosing to retreat and defend, he's already at a disadvantage. Especially when his opponent is someone like Chu Xiu, who's also firm and fierce. If he takes a step back, he won't be able to go back." Uncle Fu said in a low voice behind Bailu, "But if he doesn't take a step back, second young master will definitely lose." Bailu lightly pointed at his chest and said indifferently, "Cultivators advance with indomitable will." He took a step back, but what he's afraid of is his own heart. Although we should try our best to avoid putting ourselves in danger, once we start fighting with our lives on the line, we can't have the slightest thought of retreating. Now that I'm here and Uncle Fu is here, Baihu still doesn't dare to fight with his life on the line. What he lacks now isn't strength, but a heart that advances with indomitable will. Uncle Fu shook his head at the side. Eldest young master could see everything clearly, but unfortunately, not everyone was like eldest young master. But in other words, if second young master had eldest young master's state of mind and strength, would eldest young masters still be so calm? Thinking of this, Uncle Fu didn't dare to think about it anymore. Although he was a martial Dao grandmaster, he had been a servant of the Ying clan for generations. Without the Shangshui Ying clan, he would not have his current strength. Moreover, a martial Dao grandmaster like him did not have much of an advantage over Bailu. Uncle Fu had spent his entire life to reach this level, whereas Bailu was destined to become a grandmaster in the future. He might even be able to climb even higher and become an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, or even the legendary supreme martial artist. At this moment, Baihu, who had been severely injured by Chu Xiu's saber, was indeed like what Bailu had said. After taking a step back, he no longer had a chance to move forward. The saber technique in Chu Xiu's hand surged forward, forcing Baihu to block it bitterly. Baihu was nearly blasted off the arena by Chu Xiu as the demonic saber swung out. At this moment, Baihu had completely abandoned the idea of defeating Chu Xiu. He just wanted to not lose so badly. However, under Chu Xiu's demonic saber, Baihu was gradually unable to resist. A ruthless look appeared in his eyes. At this moment, he wanted to fight with his life on the line. As Baihu performed a hand seal, a wisp of blood qi in his body surged into the earth energy around him. The majestic earth energy directly condensed into a ferocious black dragon. However, the dragon's eyes were stained with 2 smears of crimson, making it look extremely real. The black earth energy dragon stretched for hundreds of feet. Not to mention the 5 Qi's origin realm, even among the unity of heaven and man realm martial artists, there were very few martial artists who could have such a degree of earth energy. However, at this moment, a strange divine light bloomed in Chu Xiu's eyes. Under Chu Xiu's heaven's sun gazing at air, the power structure of the earth energy dragon was revealed in detail. As Chu Xiu's saber descended, the saber technique was not as ferocious and domineering as before. It appeared light, but it slashed down at the earth energy dragon at a strange angle like an antelope hanging its horn. The crimson light in the eyes of the astral energy dragon shattered completely, and its huge body crumbled, turning into astral energy that scattered in all directions. The powerful backlash caused Baihu to spit out a mouthful of blood, and an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. This was the Ying clan's royal heavenly treasure record's secret technique, Dragon's finishing touch. It only had a form when condensed from earth energy, but when one used their own qi, blood and martial intent to add eyes to the earth energy dragon, It would allow an invisible object to display a world-shaking transformation. In the end, his secret technique was defeated by Chu Xiu the moment he used it. Furthermore, it was defeated in such an inexplicable manner that he didn't even know how he had lost. Chu Xiu's figure did not move. He waved his hand, and as the demonic aura surged, Ying Baihu's qi and blood began to churn. Under the great demonic blood technique, Ying Baihu could not even control the power of his qi and blood. However, he still had some foundation after all. He would not be like other warriors who would have his qi and blood drawn out by Chu Xiu's great demonic blood technique so easily. He gritted his teeth and tried to suppress the churning qi and blood in his body with a ferocious expression. However, he soon discovered that no matter what he did, the qi and blood in his body were boiling even more violently. It was as if his qi and blood no longer belonged to him. Ying Baihu's expression did not change in the slightest as he watched his younger brother suffer such a miserable defeat at the hands of Chu Xiu. He simply said to Fu Bo, make your move. Baihu has received enough of the lesson and tempering he deserves. If this continues, his qi and blood will be damaged and his foundation will be damaged. Fu Bo nodded. His figure moved, and in the next moment he appeared in front of Ying Baihu. He patted Ying Baihu's shoulder lightly, and in an instant, a powerful force surged into Ying Baihu's body, completely isolating Chu Xiu's great demonic blood technique. Young man, when it is possible to let people go, one should forgive them. If you go too far, you won't have a good ending. Fu Bo looked deeply at Chu Xiu and said lightly. Chu Xiu withdrew his great demonic blood technique and shrugged. Anyone who enters the arena must be prepared to be killed. No one will show mercy in the arena of life and death. If he had admitted defeat, I would have stopped. However, it seems that the people of your Ying clan do not have the habit of admitting defeat. In that case, don't blame me for not holding back. Besides, who said that going too far won't have a good ending? In my opinion, if you don't go too far, you'll only bring endless trouble in the future. Of course, you're a senior, and the words of a senior always make sense. Fu Bo snorted coldly after being stabbed by Chu Xiu's words. He directly grabbed Ying Baihu and turned to leave. If Chu Xiu dared to speak to other martial Dao grandmasters like this, they would definitely teach Chu Xiu a lesson. However, Fu Bo's primary identity was a servant of the Ying clan, and his secondary identity was a martial Dao grandmaster. As long as Ying Baihu did not say anything, he would not make a move against Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu stood on the arena, calmly looking around. In truth, he did not use much strength to defeat Ying Baihu. Ying Baihu came from the Shangshuaying clan, so he had a solid foundation and a high cultivation base. Unfortunately, his combat experience was too lacking, which led to his poor combat strength. Combat experience was something that could only be tempered through life and death battles. Even if one didn't step into the Jianghu, some big sects would have some dangerous secret realms that could allow their disciples to experience life and death battles. That way, they could train themselves. However, Ying Baihu had clearly not experienced this kind of tempering. He only thought that he could obtain great strength by cultivating diligently. This was true. If he encountered a cultivator like Xie Xiaolu who was weaker than him, Ying Baihu could naturally crush his opponent with pure strength. But if he faced someone like Chu Xiu who was stronger than him in both strength and combat strength, the process would be reversed, and it would be Chu Xiu suppressing him. Ying Bailu looked at Ying Baihu, who had a look of disbelief on his face, and said indifferently, "Didn't you want to challenge me? You can't even take this little setback? You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth until you step into the Jianghu. Do you really think that the people on the Longhu list are useless? With your strength, you can barely beat Xie Xiaolu, who is one level lower than you. There are also warriors in the three-flower realm in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Although you are one level higher than them, you may not be able to beat them." Ying Baihu stood silently behind Ying Bailu. However, from the way he clenched his fists tightly, it wasn't hard to tell that he would have to train hard after returning to the Ying clan. He wanted to catch up to Ying Bailu as soon as possible. At this time, on the arena, Luo Junyan looked at Ying Baihu. However, Ying Baihu did not have the slightest intention of making a move, which made Luo Junyan a little anxious. What did Ing Baihu mean by this? Did he really look down on Luo Feiheng? Moreover, his younger brother had been crushed by Chu Xiu. Didn't he want to take revenge for his younger brother? Even Uncle Fu hesitated behind Ing Baihu and transmitted his voice. Young master, are you really not going to make a move? If you make a move, no one here can beat you. Luo Feiheng is 100% yours, young master. Although the Luo family of Wu County has declined greatly, you also said that Luo Feiheng is a bright pearl. Her future is limitless. Ing Baihu shook his head and said, Luo Feiheng is a bright pearl, but unfortunately she is not the pearl in my heart. Therefore I can't take this pearl away. Uncle Fu, there is no need to say more. You know how I feel. My family and father will not interfere with my decision. Uncle Fu sighed. Young master was the most outstanding youth he had seen in his life. In Uncle Fu's opinion, even the celestial master abodes Zhang Qingjin and the great light temple's wisdom monarch Zhongshuan could not compare to young master. One could only draw talismans, while the other could only chant scriptures. However, it was a pity that he could not obtain the pearl in young master's heart. The female disciples of the Yu Palace never married outside. Even if they did, they would not have a good ending. Not to mention that Yan Fian was the most outstanding disciple of the Yu Palace in this generation. She was also the successor of the Yu Palace. Even if Yan Fian and Ing Baihu were in love, the Yu Palace would not let her go. Moreover, Uncle Fu had seen Yan Fian once. In his opinion, that little girl was not easy to deal with. She had too many schemes in her heart. On the contrary, someone like Luo Feiheng was a good match. Chapter 444. Ing Bailu didn't want to make a move. Chu Xiu stood proudly in front of the crowd, but no one made a sound. Based on the strength Chu Xiu displayed just now, who would dare to court death? Nie Donglu was Chu Xiu's old rival. He had already lost to Chu Xiu last time, so he naturally wouldn't jump out and make trouble for himself. If he didn't have absolute confidence, Nie Donglu wouldn't fight Chu Xiu head-on. As for Eastern Cheese Li Yuan, although he said he would teach Chu Xiu a lesson to avenge the crown prince, he wasn't an idiot. He knew his own strength and knew that he couldn't beat Chu Xiu one-on-one. It was more likely that he would cause trouble for Chu Xiu in secret. So for a moment, the crowd was silent. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Luo Junyan and said with a smile, I say, Senior Luo, it looks like there's no one here who wants to participate. In that case, I'm the victor of this joust for a spouse search competition, right? Luo Junyan looked at Ing Bailu, but the latter didn't seem to see him. He had no intention of making a move. This time, Luo Junyan finally understood. He could be considered a veteran, but this time, he was tricked by Ing Bailu. No wonder when they contacted the Ing Enterprises, they didn't mention anything like an engagement. Instead, they insisted on holding a joust for a spouse. As long as there was no engagement, the Ing Enterprises could advance or retreat as they pleased. But the Luo family was trapped here. Luo Junyan looked at Chu Xiu and frowned. Chu Xiu, don't make trouble here. So what if you win this round? Don't think I don't know the relationship between you two. You're just good friends. Are you really going to marry Luo Feiheng? Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, Who says that good friends can't marry? She treats me as a good friend, but now I want to treat Feiheng as my lover. Can't I? We are all young people. Isn't it normal to fall in love with each other? Or do you think that I, Chu Xiu, am not worthy of your Luo family, or are you going to go back on your words? Chu Xiu's series of rhetorical questions were reasonable, but Luo Junyan waved his hand and snorted coldly, Chu Xiu, you're just making trouble. This matter does not count. The joust for a spouse is temporarily suspended. Everyone present could see that Luo Junyan was acting shamelessly. It was just a family. Even if a martial Dao Grand Master went back on his word, what could you do to him? Could he forcefully take Luo Feiheng away? However, at this moment, Luo Feiheng, who had been sitting quietly in the Luo clan side, suddenly opened his eyes and said, Luo Junyan, do you really treat me as a commodity? You didn't sell me for a good price, so you're looking for an opportunity to sell me again? Luo Tianyang's face sank as he shouted, How dare you? How dare you call the ancestor by his name? Hurry up and apologize to the ancestor. Luo Feiheng sneered. Apologize, Luo Tianyang. From the day you attacked me, I no longer have anything to do with the Luo clan. From now on, you and I are strangers. As for this old fart, I'm giving him face by calling him by his name. The previous generation of the Luo clan was still tolerable, but it was his generation that caused the Luo clan to decline to this state. To think he still has the nerve to live. If it were me, I would have killed myself and gone back to apologize to my ancestors. One had to admit that Luo Feiheng's mouth was really vicious. Luo Junyan's face was as gloomy as water at this moment. He shouted in a low voice, "Break his legs and throw him into the ancestral hall to repent to his ancestors." The Luo clan doesn't have such an unfilial disciple. However, at this moment, Luo Feiheng's lips curled into a sneer. Ancestral hall? I'm afraid from today onward, you won't throw any disciple into the ancestral hall to repent. As he spoke, Luo Feiheng suddenly stretched out his left hand. Previously, Luo Feiheng was sitting there with his eyes closed. His left hand was also shrouded in the sleeve of his robe, so no one noticed it. Only now did they realize that Luo Feiheng's left hand was actually holding a transparent, amber ball that was stained with Luo Feiheng's blood. After absorbing Luo Feiheng's blood, the ball was actually covered with blood vessels and looked a little evil. Seeing the ball, the expressions of Luo Junyan, Luo Tianyang, and some of the Luo clan's elders changed. Luo Junyan shouted, "Why is the ancestral relic in your hands?" Upon hearing this, everyone immediately turned to look at the ancestral relic in Luo Feiheng's hand. So this was the Luo clan's legendary ancestral relic. Each of the 9 great families had at least a few hundred years of heritage, so they naturally had some trump cards. The Luo clan was naturally the same. Among them, the Luo clan was most famous for this ancestral relic. It was said that the Luo clan's ancestor was once a monk. Of course, he was not a monk from the Great Light Temple or the Subodhi Monastery. In the end, the Luo clan's ancestor was a monk for more than 10 years before he suddenly converted to Taoism and became a Taoist priest for more than 10 years. Only then did he suddenly renounce asceticism, get married, have children, and establish the Luo clan. Therefore, the Luo clan's cultivation method was very interesting. It could be considered to be a dual cultivation of Taoism and Buddhism, but the traces of each were not obvious. This ancestral relic was formed from the Luo clan's ancestor's cultivation when he passed away. He also used the formation techniques he learned in Taoism to set up a large formation that could attack, defend, and cultivate in the entire Luo clan's mansion. This large formation could be used for both attack and defense. Usually, it would condense a strong qi of heaven and earth at a specific location for the Luo clan's disciples to cultivate. It could be said to be an all-rounder. The core of this large formation was this ancestral relic. It was usually enshrined in the Luo clan's ancestral hall. No one expected it to fall into the hands of Luo Feiheng. Holding the ancestral relic, Luo Feiheng smirked and said, "How did you get it? Have you forgotten who locked me up in the ancestral hall?" Hearing this, Luo Junyan and the other elders of the Luo clan trembled with anger. This was not because they were careless, but because they did not expect Luo Feiheng to be so rebellious. Things like the ancestral relic were guaranteed to be enshrined in the ancestral hall. After all, for a family, the ancestral hall was the place where they enshrined their ancestors. It was the absolute central area and the most sacred place. If the Luo clan was attacked by external enemies and the attack reached the ancestral hall, it would be a disaster that would destroy the entire clan. Therefore, the ancestral hall was the safest place for the Luo clan. Moreover, as a disciple of the Luo clan, they should know what the ancestral relic represented. Who would dare to touch it? What Luo Feiheng did was basically the same as digging up his own ancestral grave. Luo Feiheng sneered and played with the ancestral relic in his hand. He said coldly, "This thing is now in my hand and has been completely soaked in my blood. Moreover, you should know where this place is located in the entire Luo clan's large formation. What do you think will happen if I crush the ancestral relic here?" Luo Junyan's expression suddenly changed. They were currently in the courtyard of the Luo clan's front hall, which was also covered by the Luo clan's large formation. This place was where the life gate of the Luo clan's large formation was located. Without the core of the formation, the Luo clan's large formation would not be able to be activated. However, they could find something else to replace it in the future. However, if Luo Feihong directly crushed the ancestral relic here, the life gate of the formation would also be broken, and the entire formation of the Luo family would be destroyed. This was equivalent to destroying a life-saving trump card of the Luo family. How dare you! If you dare to touch the ancestral relic, you will definitely not be able to take half a step out of the Luo clan. Luo Junyan gritted his teeth and spat out these words. He really did not expect Luo Feihong to be so rebellious. She actually dared to use the ancestral relic to threaten him. At this time, Chu Xiu and the others also stood up and stood beside Luo Feihong. Their attitude was obvious. Previously, Luo Feihong had already told them the plan and asked them to help stall for time. Meanwhile, she would stay at the life gate of the large formation and use her blood to completely control the ancestral relic. This thing was only a dead object. In theory, as long as a martial artist had the Luo clan's bloodline, they could control it. If the Luo clan's patriarch could do it, then so could she. Of course, after doing this, Luo Feihong would definitely break off relations with the Luo clan. It might even escalate to the point where one of them would die. Moreover, Chu Xiu and the others could also be said to have offended the Luo clan. In the original plot, Luo Feihong only crippled Luo Feiyun and broke off relations with the Luo clan. However, it could not be considered as a fight to the death. However, this time, Luo Feihong played it big enough. He directly wanted to destroy the entire Luo clan's foundation. Luo Junyan looked at Chu Xiu and the others standing beside Luo Feihong. He first said to Mo Yezi coldly, "Mo Yezi, you and I can be considered old friends. This is my Luo clan's matter. Do you really want to get involved?" Mo Yezi said indifferently, "Luo Junyan, don't mess up our friendship. I have nothing to do with you. Your Luo clan's previous leader, Luo Shiming, is a character who once helped me. That's why I agreed to refine a weapon for your Luo clan. However, the blood spear red kite has already been refined. Naturally, our friendship is over. Now, you're trying to force the owner of the blood spear red kite to leave. Who do you think I should help? Moreover, this time, your Luo clan is too incompetent. You want to rely on marriage to extend the clan's future? Isn't that ridiculous? I hit it off with Feihong. I have to intervene in this matter." Luo Junyan turned his gaze to Chu Xiu and the others. They also had a fearless look on their faces. Xie Xiaolu was backed by a fierce person like Qinqing Di. Moreover, the power behind him was in West Chu. To put it bluntly, without Luo Feihong, he didn't care about the Luo clan at all. If Luo Junyan wanted to demand an explanation from the Heaven Alliance, he would most likely be punched out by Qinqing Di. Emperor Qinqing Di had always been this domineering when it came to helping those close to him. As for Chu Xiu, not to mention the fact that he was secretly a member of the Yinma clan and had a powerful backing, even on the surface, the Guanzhong torture room was far more powerful than the Luo clan. The only one who had some concerns was Mo Tianlin. However, for Mo Tianlin, since he had already made up his mind, he would at most resist this matter. Anyway, although the Mo clan wasn't strong, they were still stronger than the Luo clan. Chapter 445. Luo Junyan was on the verge of exploding. Luo Junyan was not famous in the Jianghu, but he was the Luo clan's patriarch. Since when had he ever been threatened by a junior like this? However, at this time, Luo Tianyang whispered behind Luo Junyan, "Old ancestor, just let them go if they can't do it. Feihong has the ancestral relic of our Luo family. Once she is enraged, it will be a lose-lose situation. Even if Feihong can't leave the Luo family, our Luo family will suffer a great loss." Luo Tianyang said this partly for the Luo clan's sake, and partly for Luo Feihong's sake. After all, Luo Feihong was his biological daughter. It would be unreasonable to say that Luo Tianyang had no feelings for her at all. If Luo Feihong really destroyed the ancestral relic and the Luo clan's grand formation, Luo Feihong would definitely die today. Although Mo Yezi was on their side, Mo Yezi was not a martial Dao grandmaster with combat strength. Chu Xiao and the others were only relatively strong among the younger generation. How could they fight against the entire Luo clan? Therefore, it was better for both sides to take a step back and let Luo Feiheng go. The Luo clan would only lose some face, but they would not lose too much. However, Luo Tianyang ignored Luo Junyan's current state of rage and his identity. If someone else had said this, Luo Junyan might have calmed down and taken a step back. However, Luo Tianyang was Luo Feiheng's father. His words were basically adding fuel to the fire. Luo Junyan looked at Luo Tianyang with a gloomy gaze and said coldly, "You're still speaking up for this vile spawn and trying to save her life? It's all because of the good daughter you've taught. As the patriarch, it's fine that you're not living up to expectations, but you've taught two children. One is useless and the other is a traitor. From now on, you can forget about being the patriarch." Luo Tianyang was stunned when he heard this. He couldn't believe that he would end up like this. Luo Junyan looked at Luo Feiheng and said coldly, "Vile spawn, I'll give you one last chance. Hand over the ancestral relic and I'll spare your life. You can repent in front of the ancestors of the Luo clan. Otherwise, you'll wish you were dead." Luo Junyan was furious, but Luo Feiheng's character was far tougher than he had imagined. Hearing Luo Junyan's words, Luo Feiheng didn't say a word. He took the ancestral relic in her hand and crushed it with a loud bang. His actions were so direct that it was beyond everyone's imagination. In that instant, the eyes of the people from the Luo family turned red. The ancestral relic not only represented the Luo family's trump card, but it also represented the Luo family's ancestors. Now that Luo Feiheng had crushed it, it was as if he had dug up his own ancestor's grave and scattered his ashes on the ground. "You're courting death!" Luo Junyan shouted angrily. A powerful aura surged from his body and he was about to attack Luo Feiheng. However, the moment the ancestral relic was destroyed, the entire Luo family began to tremble. Layers of formation inscriptions appeared on the ground, but the radiance of the formation had already begun to shatter. At this time, an elder's expression suddenly changed and he shouted, "Ancestor! Don't worry about her. The ancestral hall is the eye of the formation. Once the formation is destroyed, the ancestral hall will be destroyed as well." The Luo clan's ancestral hall was a place to worship their ancestors, so it was extremely meaningful. If the Luo clan's ancestral hall was destroyed in the hands of their generation, then they would really be too ashamed to face their ancestors. However, Luo Junyan was already enraged. He said coldly, "There's still time. I'll kill this vile spawn before the formation is destroyed." On Luo Feiheng's side, Mo Yezi sighed and said, "Now that you've made a move, you and the Luo family will never rest until one of you is dead." Luo Feiheng said calmly, "From the moment the Luo family decided to betray me, the result was already decided." Mo Yezi shook his head and said, "You guys take Feiheng and rush out. I'll buy some time and bring up the rear." As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Yezi took out 4 swords from the secret space box. These 4 swords were shining brightly. They were 4 godly weapons. As Mo Yezi poured his true qi into the swords, the 4 swords carried sword qi and flew towards Luo Junyan. Even though Mo Yezi had never cultivated any martial techniques and had no combat ability, this did not mean that he did not have the slightest ability to resist. As a grandmaster of weaponsmithing, Mo Yezi had no lack of weapons. To others, a god weapon was an existence that could only be chanced upon by luck, but to Mo Yezi, as long as he had enough materials, forging a god weapon was not too difficult. These 4 long swords were personally forged by Mo Yezi. Every day, he would nourish them with his own blood essence and qi. Moreover, Mo Yezi had asked a few Taoist masters of the real martial arts cult to carve a sword formation on them. As long as there was enough real qi at the critical moment, these 4 long swords could automatically display the real martial arts cult's true martial sword formation. Although the power was not too strong, it was enough to delay the enemy for a while. With Luo Junyan's strength, this sword formation might not be able to stop him, but he would not be able to break it so easily either. Seeing that Mo Yezi had some tricks up his sleeves, Chu Xiao squinted and said, Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead. The heavenly demon dance in his hand was filled with demonic qi, and the first few warriors from the Luo family were killed on the spot. How dare you! A warrior from the Luo family in the unity of heaven and man realm rushed out. Ing Bailu did not want to save the Luo family, but someone else wanted to. To be precise, they did not want to save the Luo family. They just wanted to make things difficult for Chu Xiu. This person was Li Yuan. Li Yuan was the crown prince's confidant. But in reality, apart from being the crown prince's confidant, he had not made any contributions to the crown prince, LV Longji. Even when he was put in an important position under LV Longji, it was not because he had made any great contributions. It was because he was more reliable in handling matters. In the past, Li Yuan didn't think too much about it since he didn't have the chance to do so. But now, he happened to see Chu Xiu, the fellow who had once caused great trouble for the crown prince. If he taught Chu Xiu a lesson this time, although it wouldn't be considered a great merit, it would still be good to make the crown prince happy. Therefore, Li Yuan thought about it and said to Qin Do, "Eunuch Qin, given the current situation, should we help the Luo family?" Qin Do touched his chin. If he was not a eunuch, this would be the posture of stroking his beard and thinking. Unfortunately, Qin Do did not have a beard, so this action seemed redundant. Help the Luo family? But the Luo family did not directly choose to join His Highness. They only want to build a relationship with His Highness. They are not considered our people. If we help the Luo family, are you sure that the Luo family will be grateful and join the crown prince? If not, then we will suffer a great loss. Li Yuan smiled and said, "Eunuch Qin, you said before that His Highness often gnashed his teeth at Chu Xiu. Previously, His Highness had concerns and could not make a move against Chu Xiu. Now, we can use the excuse of helping the Luo family to deal with the rebels to attack Chu Xiu. This excuse should be enough, right?" Chapter 446. The fight within the Luo clan was not that intense. In fact, in Chu Xiu's opinion, the level of trash in the Luo clan was beyond his imagination. On the other side, Mo Yezi made his move. Countless sword chi crisscrossed and blocked Luo Jinyan's path. Although the sword formation formed by the four divine weapons was clearly not a match for Luo Jinyan, Chu Xiu was about to kill his way out. To be more accurate, he was running away. This was because, apart from Chu Xiu killing a cultivator from the Luo clan, the other cultivators from the Luo clan were so frightened that they did not dare to make a move. To be honest, even Chu Xiu felt that it was a little unbelievable. If it was a group of loose cultivators, it would be fine. After all, those loose cultivators were divided at heart. Even if there were benefits or the threat of death in front of them, they would not want to be the first to die. But now, the other party was from the same clan. They were bound together for good or bad. Based on Luo Feiheng's previous actions, it would not be strange if this group of people rushed over crazily with bloodshot eyes. But now, they were so scared that no one dared to make a move. The Luo clan was really hopeless. But at this moment, a whistling sword chi approached Chu Xiu from behind. The sword chi was extremely sinister and carried a gloomy chill. It seemed to be able to tear the air apart. There was no sound at all. If it were not for Chu Xiu's sharp senses, he would not have been able to detect the sword chi. Chu Xiu raised the heavenly demon dance in his hand. Wherever the long saber pointed, demonic chi erupted, directly shattering the sword chi. But at this time, the sword chi contained a chill that flowed into Chu Xiu's body. It actually started to freeze his meridians. Chu Xiu frowned. He formed the lion seal in his hand and a powerful force dispersed all the different kinds of chi. Only then did he manage to suppress the chill. But at this moment, a whistling wind exploded. On the other side, someone blasted out a punch. Astral chi exploded. The power was also extraordinary. Chu Xiu snorted coldly. He formed the great Vajra wheel seal in his hand and slammed it down. Buddhist light and astral energy exploded and blasted that person away. Beside Chu Xiu, Eunuch Qin held a pitch-black rapier that gave off a deep chill and pointed it at Chu Xiu. On the other side, Li Yuan was also staring coldly at Chu Xiu, his eyes filled with killing intent. Chu Xiu frowned. The Luo clan's people had not made a move, but LV Longji's people had made a move. This was a thorny problem. Based on the exchange just now, Chu Xiu could tell that Eunuch Chen's strength was not weak. There were no mediocre people from the imperial palace, not to mention that he was the personal eunuch supervisor of Crown Prince Lu Longji. It was the same for Li Yuan. Putting aside this person's future, although he had not made a living in Jianghu, he had been trained by Duke Lin's mansion with all their resources since he was a child. He had accumulated considerable strength in the imperial court and was considered strong among warriors of the same level. But has the Luo clan completely surrendered to the imperial court? Do you need the imperial court to take care of this kind of thing? Chu Xiu said lightly. Before the Luo clan's people could speak, Li Yuan sneered and said, Chu Xiu, don't talk about Jianghu and the imperial court. You were born in the Guanzhong torture room, but you have cooperated with the imperial court. Not only the Eastern Qi imperial court, but also West Chu and Northern Yan. Since the Luo clan has chosen to be on good terms with the crown prince, we can't turn a blind eye to this matter. Hand over Luo Feiheng and leave the Luo clan, then we won't make things difficult for you. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to walk out of the Luo clan's door today. As Li Yuan's voice fell, Nie Donglu also walked out with a smile on his face and said, Brother Li is right. Chu Xiu, you've been involved in too many things, and your hands have stretched too far. There are so many things in Jianghu, and you want to meddle in all of them. This time, I'm afraid you won't get what you want. Nie Donglu had a smile on his face, but his heart was filled with killing intent. Since the last time he attacked Lu Fengxian, he and Chu Xiu had formed an irreconcilable enmity. Originally, Nie Renlong had told Nie Donglu that Chu Xiu was not easy to deal with, and it was best not to make a move without absolute confidence. But today, Chu Xiu made him see an even stronger threat, not only because of Chu Xiu, but also because of others. Today, Chu Xiu and the others could go against the Luo clan for Luo Feiheng. In the future, people like Luo Feiheng and Xie Xiao Lu would naturally do the same for Chu Xiu. Whether it was Lu Fengxian or Xie Xiao Lu and Luo Feiheng, none of them were easy to deal with. Even the weakest Mo Tianlin had a place in the younger generation of Jianghu. Since these people were Chu Xiu's friends, they were destined to be his enemies in the future. Nie Donglu had enough reason to make a move. Most importantly, Nie Donglu could not understand how a person like Chu Xiu could make friends with people like Lu Fengxian, who were willing to die for him. In terms of friends, Nie Donglu had a lot of them. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had 10 or even 100 times more friends than Chu Xiu. Not to mention Northern Yan, even in Jianghu, Nie Donglu had countless good friends. No matter where he went, he was familiar with many people. But Nie Donglu knew that although he seemed to have a lot of connections, he could not find anyone like the people around Chu Xiu, who would disregard their own interests to help others. Chu Xiu looked at Li Yuan, Nie Donglu, and the others, then turned to Luo Feiheng and smiled helplessly. I think you made a mistake in asking me to help this time. If I hadn't come, it would have been easier for you guys. If Chu Xiu hadn't come this time, Luo Feiheng and Xie Xiao Lu's strength would have been enough to kill their way out of the Luo family. It was the same in the original plot. At that time, there was no Chu Xiu, but Xie Xiao Lu, Mo Tianlin, and Mo Yezi should have been there. Things went smoothly, but in the end, Chu Xiu did not expect that he would attract so much hatred. The Crown Prince's people and Nie Donglu had appeared. It was even more troublesome than in the original plot. Luo Feiheng waved the blood spear red kite in his hand and raised his eyebrows. So what if more people come? We're going to fight anyway. Let's kill our way out. From the moment Luo Feiheng made the decision to break ties with the Luo family, she was ready to fight to the death. Even if there were more people, she would have been prepared, let alone now. Chu Xiu let out a long sigh and said, Then let's do it. But you're seriously injured now. Just hide at the back. As soon as he finished speaking, the long saber in Chu Xiu's hand flickered with a deep demonic and bloody aura. With a ferocious aura, it slashed down towards Nie Donglio's head. The person Chu Xiu wanted to kill the most was Nie Donglu. At this time, he should kill Nie Donglu the most. He had offended the crown prince, LV Longji. Even if he killed the old eunuch and Li Yuan, LV Longji's people would still cause trouble for him in the future. Nie Donglu could be considered Chu Xiu's old enemy. Most importantly, it would be difficult to kill this guy. A gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. Nie Donglu was not a gentleman, but he was more careful than a gentleman. Compared to the previously impulsive Xiahou Wujiang, Nie Donglu could be said to be extremely careful. Once there was any sign of trouble, he was guaranteed to be the first to escape. Then he would continuously find trouble for Chu Xiu. It could be said that he was extremely annoying. Therefore, when he saw Nie Donglu again, Chu Xiu's killing intent rose immediately, and he turned to attack him. On the Luo family's side, the Luo family warriors who had been frightened by Chu Xiu saw that Chu Xiu was surrounded by 3 people. They were emboldened, and they turned to attack Xie Xiaolu and the others. Chu Xiu and the others might not be able to defeat them, but could they not defeat the others? Under the siege of the crowd, the people who were about to escape from the Luo family were delayed again. Nie Donglu let out a long laugh. The universe rotated in his hand, and powerful Gang Qi kept spiraling in his hand, resisting Chu Xiu's blade. Although the power of Chu Xiu's blade, which was condensed with powerful devil qi and his own blood qi, was shocking, Nie Donglio's heaven and earth cloud hand could control the universe, and it could attack and defend. At this time, it had already counteracted the power of Chu Xiu's blade. At this time, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen began to join forces to attack Chu Xiu. The two of them worked well together. In the past, when they were under Crown Prince LV Longji, they had worked together a lot. Eunuch Chen, as LV Longji's personal chief eunuch, was also a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm. He had often given pointers to Li Yuan and the others. The thin sword in Eunuch Chen's hand was evil and strange, and so was the way he walked. When the sword stabbed out, the Gang Qi was not like that of other great experts at the unity of heaven and man realm, where the sword Qi and sword Gang burst out over 100 feet with astonishing power. Instead, his sword was extremely soft. It looked like a casual sword stab, but it was aimed at the vital parts of the body. The small sword light was extremely condensed, and even Chu Xiu's Gang Qi could not completely defend against it. Li Yuan was good at close combat techniques such as fist and foot. His physical cultivation was not weak, and his martial arts path was open, so he could cooperate perfectly with Eunuch Chen. Facing a pincer attack from the two of them, Chu Xiu took a step forward in an instant. The killing intent around him soared into the sky, and he had already stepped into the selfless killing realm. The heaven demon dance was dyed with a layer of strange blood-red color. The long saber slashed out horizontally, forcing Eunuch Chen to retreat. At this moment, Li Yuan punched out. Chu Xiu's left hand formed the great Vajra wheel seal, and with a loud bang, Li Yuan was sent flying. The powerful force made Li Yuan, who cultivated a body-tempering technique and had a strong physical body, turn pale. Fighting 1 against 3, Chu Xiu had indeed used his powerful martial arts technique to suppress the 3 of them at the beginning of the battle. However, as the battle went on, he felt that his strength was not as strong as he wished. The 3 of them were not simple people. There was no need to talk about Eunuch Chen. Chu Xiu could easily kill some weaker unity of heaven and man realm warriors, but he could not kill an expert like Eunuch Chen. Li Yuan and Nie Donglu were also considered outstanding existences among warriors of the same level. In a one-on-one battle, they could not win against Chu Xiu. However, under the siege, Chu Xiu was unable to finish them all off in a short period of time. Chapter 447. Chu Xiu was fighting 1 against 3, and one of them was an oneness of heaven and man expert. Although he could not do anything to the 3 of them, the 3 of them could not do anything to Chu Xiu either. This kind of battle result could already be said to be astonishing. Even the gazes of the people present shifted between Chu Xiu, who was fighting, and Ying Bailu. They did not know who was stronger between the two. Of course, it seemed that Ying Bailu was stronger. After all, Ying Bailu was already in the oneness of heaven and man realm, while Chu Xiu was only in the 5 qis collecting in origin realm. However, the people could also see that Chu Xiu was almost at the peak of the 5 qis collecting in origin realm. It was only a matter of time before he stepped into the oneness of heaven and man realm. When the two of them were almost at the same level, it was unknown who would win. However, in this chaotic battle, Chu Xiu was not defeated even though he was fighting 1 against 3. There was someone who could not hold on anymore, and that was Mo Yezi. After all, Mo Yezi was only a weapon refiner at the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. If he were to fight a martial Dao Grandmaster head-on, he would not be able to last long. Even if his 4 magic weapons could form the true martial sword formation, it was still an inanimate object. Its power was completely different from the true martial sword technique performed by the experts of the true martial sect. At this time, he was almost unable to stop Luo Junyan. Moreover, Luo Junyan was still in a state of rage. Today, the Luo family had lost both their reputation and their reputation. In fact, it was not uncommon for the major sects and families in Jianghu to betray their masters and ancestors. Every sect had a few traitors. This was a very normal thing. However, no one was like the Luo family. The descendants of the Luo family had destroyed the relics and trump cards left by their ancestors. They simply wanted their family to be destroyed. Of course, that was what Luo Feihong thought. Luo Junyan could imagine how the Jianghu would judge the Luo family in the future. Even the Wu County Luo family might become a laughingstock in Jianghu. What's more, the Luo family's formation from Wu Prefecture had been destroyed by Luo Feihong in front of so many martial artists. If the news got out, would the other forces that had a grudge against the Luo family be tempted to make trouble for them? After all, this could be said to be the Luo family's most declining period. Luo Junyan felt a headache when he thought about this. Therefore, Luo Junyan simply stopped thinking and attacked furiously. This time, he must not let Luo Feihong escape. Under Luo Junyan's crazy attack, the sword formation formed by the 4 god weapons was already a little unstable. As Luo Junyan brandished the long sword in his hand, the true martial sword formation began to tremble. In the end, the countless sword astral swords condensed into one, drawing upon the power of the heavens and earth to form a majestic sword astral swords nearly 100 zhang in length. It whistled down and directly smashed into the true martial sword formation. Immediately, a loud sound rang out. Cracks appeared on one of the divine weapons, causing the true martial sword formation to begin to collapse. Seeing that Mo Yezi was about to collapse, Chu Xiu also frowned. Chu Xiu had experienced the strength of a martial Dao Grandmaster once, when Nie Renlong attacked him. It was definitely a power that he could not match. Although Luo Junyan was much weaker than Nie Renlong, a martial Dao Grandmaster was still a martial Dao Grandmaster. No matter how weak he was still a martial Dao Grandmaster. Chu Xiu was not confident that he could stop Luo Junyan at this moment. Therefore, at this moment, Chu Xiu did not want to delay any longer. The earth energy around him surged to the extreme, and in an instant, Chu Xiu's eyes became hollow. At this moment, he performed the heavens sun gazing at air skill to the extreme. Everything around him had condensed into silk threads in Chu Xiu's eyes, dancing and changing rapidly. Amidst the countless silk threads, Chu Xiu's mental energy skyrocketed to the extreme. His figure wandered in the endless fist wind and sword aura. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen were shocked to discover that the two of them seemed to be feeding Chu Xiu moves at this moment. As soon as they attacked, Chu Xiu had already prepared to dodge in advance. At this moment, they had already attacked with all their might, and they could not retract their moves halfway. This feeling made them extremely depressed, and they had the urge to vomit blood. However, within these few moves, Chu Xiu had completely shaken off Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan's entanglement, and his figure appeared in front of Nie Donglu. In an instant, Nie Donglu felt an extreme sense of danger. Without saying a word, he performed the heaven and earth cloud-reaching hand. Powerful earth energy was condensed by him, one clear and one turbid. The two forces were like a Tai Chi diagram, defending in front of him while he retreated rapidly. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu was prepared to attack with all his might to break the stalemate. How could he let Nie Donglu escape just like that? With a slash of the blade, the force of the blade accurately struck the boundary between the clear and turbid forces of the universe. As if it was a simple move, the Tai Chi diagram suddenly shattered. Chu Xiu's hand formed the external lion seal. In an instant, the sound of Buddha exploded like thunder. The powerful force rang in Ye Donglio's ears, immediately making him feel dizzy. Even if he used all his spiritual qi to suppress it, he could not completely suppress the feeling. This made Nye Donglu feel like vomiting blood. It was this move again. Chu Xiu's external lion seal was similar to the Great Light Temple's lion's roar of 9 transformations. They were both martial arts techniques that could not be used to defeat the enemy in one move, but could not be parried. When used suddenly, it would catch the enemy off guard. Even if the enemy managed to defend in time, it would still have some effect. Chu Xiu took one step at a time. With each step, he formed an external lion seal. The sound of thunder and explosions seemed to be continuous, ringing in Ye Donglio's ears. This made his spiritual qi start to dissipate, and blood flowed uncontrollably from his ears and nose. Seals like the external lion seal, which consumed a lot of energy, were continuously used by Chu Xiu. His consumption was not small. By the time he got close to Nye Donglu, his face was already pale. Seeing Chu Xiu's appearance, Nye Donglu gritted his teeth and decisively stopped retreating. Instead, he gathered all the spiritual qi in his body and slammed his palm down on Chu Xiu. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen were right behind him. As long as he could hold them off for a moment, Chu Xiu would definitely die. However, before his palm could explode, Chu Xiu's great demonic blood technique had already begun to be used at full force. As the seals in Chu Xiu's hands were performed, boundless demonic qi stirred up his qi and blood. This made Nye Donglu let out a muffled grunt, and a look of shock appeared in his eyes. Previously, Chu Xiu had wasted his spiritual qi and used so many external lion seals to fight Nye Donglu head-on. He had not done it to affect Nye Donglio's attacks, but to directly use the external lion seal to shake Nye Donglu until he bled, so that his body would no longer be like an iron bucket. Only then would he be able to use the great demonic blood technique to its fullest. Actually, Nye Donglu knew about the great demonic blood technique. After all, he had participated in the great battle on floating Jade Mountain. However, Nye Donglu had not expected the power of the great demonic blood technique to be so terrifying. It was so terrifying that he could not suppress it even with all the spiritual qi in his body. Now, Nye Donglu finally understood why Han Ting from the Sword Hut had only been willing to take out the blood-killing blade and not the great demonic blood technique. This was not because the Sword Hut was stingy, but because this technique was truly evil to the extreme. Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen, who were behind him, had already attacked again. There was only one move left for Chu Xiu to make his move. With a wave of one hand, boundless demonic qi mixed with qi and blood was extracted from Nye Donglio's body. At the same time, the qi and blood in Chu Xiu's body also erupted. The two forces of qi and blood merged into one, becoming an evil blade completely condensed from blood. It slashed down on Nye Donglio's head. Any spiritual qi or defense was shattered by the blood blade. After all, Nye Donglio's strength was not ordinary. Even if Chu Xiu used the great demonic blood technique, he would not be able to extract all the qi and blood in his body. However, Nye Donglu did not have enough qi and blood. Chu Xiu used his own qi and blood to make up for it. After all, the blood-killing blade only consumed qi and blood. No matter whose qi and blood it was, the stronger the better. Because they had the same source of power, Nye Donglio's spiritual qi defense was reduced to nothing under the blood-killing blade. However, Nye Donglio's reaction was fast. After noticing the characteristics of the blood-killing blade, he did not choose to passively defend. Instead, he gathered all the spiritual qi around him and stirred the world. The explosive spiritual qi affected the surrounding spiritual qi of the world, forming a cyclone in front of him. However, although the cyclone looked extraordinary, it was still shattered by Chu Xiu's evil blood-killing blade. There was a loud bang and blood splattered everywhere. Nye Donglu was sent flying. He clutched a hideous wound on his chest and spat out blood. His eyes were filled with shock. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. As expected, he still could not kill Nye Donglu at this time. Furthermore, He did not have the chance to kill Nie Donglu now. Behind him, Li Yuan and Eunuch Qin had joined forces to attack. One's fist force was extremely powerful, while the other's sword force was ruthless and evil. The two attacks were already upon him. Even if Chu Xiu used Heaven's Sun gazing at air, he would not be able to dodge completely. He could see the trajectory of the opponent's attack, but he was too fast to dodge. Therefore, in that instant, Chu Xiu held the Dugusil in his hand and condensed all the spiritual qi in his body into one. He was as immovable as a mountain, invincible. There was a violent explosion of spiritual qi, and Chu Xiu's figure was sent flying. A stream of blood flowed down the corner of his mouth. In a hurry to defend, even Chu Xiu's Dugusil could not block the attacks of these two. However, for the current Chu Xiu, it was enough. Kill! With a loud shout, Chu Xiu took the lead and fled out of the Luo family. Behind him, Luo Feiheng and the other two also erupted with their strongest power. They attacked directly, killing the Luo family warriors in front of them and fleeing together. Li Yuan and Eunuch Qin looked at each other and did not continue to attack. They only wanted to find trouble with Chu Xiu. It was not an irreconcilable hatred. At this time, since Chu Xiu had already escaped, they naturally did not have to waste their energy to chase after him. Of course, based on the power that Chu Xiu had displayed just now, after Nie Donglu was seriously injured, they really did not dare to chase after him. Chapter 448. Mo Yezi let out a sigh of relief when Chu Xiu and the others successfully escaped. He retreated as he fought and left the Luo residence. Mo Yezi was actually quite confident. He knew that even if he lost, Luo Junyan would not kill him. In the Jianghu, there were some people that most martial artists didn't want to offend. For example, the West Chu miracle doctor, angering Yama, Feng Buping. Although he had a strange temper, he didn't want to offend anyone because he didn't know when he would need someone's help. There were also array masters, divination grandmasters, and so on. Although these people were not as good as ordinary martial artists in terms of combat power, they could be of great help to martial artists in the aspect they specialized in. From this, they could make terrifying connections. Mo Yezi was one such grandmaster in smithing. Ever since he stepped into this realm, he had forged countless weapons for others, including countless precious weapons and divine weapons. All of these connections were enough to make Luo Junyan feel apprehensive. Although Luo Junyan did not want to chase after Mo Yezi, he did not want Luo Feiheng and the others to escape the Luo residence. But before he could chase after them, a Luo family disciple shouted anxiously, "Ancestor! If we don't suppress the array in the ancestral hall, the entire ancestral hall will collapse." Luo Junyan glared at the direction Luo Feiheng and the others escaped in. He had no choice but to turn around and run towards the ancestral hall. At this time, Luo Feiheng and the others had escaped more than 10 miles away. When they saw that no one was chasing after them, they stopped and began to recover their injuries and internal energy. Emoton Lin looked at Luo Feiheng and teased, "You are now homeless. Where do you plan to go from now on? But Eastern Qi, I advise you not to stay here. You were really ruthless this time. I'm afraid that from now on, the Luo family will not rest until you are dead." Mo Yezi said, "Little Feiheng, it's not a big deal if you want to stay in Eastern Qi. My Mirror Lake Manor may not have much power, but I do have some influence in Jianghu. If I take you in, even Luo Junyan won't dare to say anything." At the side, Xie Xiaolu also said, "That's right. Senior Mo has a place for you, and so does our World Alliance. Brother Chu's Guanzhong torture room is also a good place to go. Luo Junyan can only flaunt his power in the Luo clan, but no one will listen to him anywhere else." Luo Feiheng shook his head and said, "I appreciate everyone's good intentions, but I've troubled you enough this time. I already have a plan for the future." At this point, Luo Feiheng's eyes flickered coldly and said, "The Luo clan thinks that they can revive the Luo clan by relying on a marriage alliance and a piece of trash like Luo Feiyun. Now, I'll show the Luo clan that I alone will surpass the entire Luo clan." Mo Tianlin and the others did not speak. They thought that Luo Feiheng said those words out of anger. After all, Although the Luo family was now in decline, they still had some foundation. Even if Luo Feihong had stepped into the martial Dao Grand Master realm, he was still alone after all. In terms of foundation, he could not compare with the Luo family. However, only Chu Xiu knew that if the situation did not change too much, Luo Feihong's future would surprise many people. Luo Feihong turned to Mo Yezi and Chu Xiu and said, "Senior Mo, Brother Chu, I'd like to borrow something from you." "What is it?" Luo Feihong said in a deep voice, "Weapons and reputation. I want to develop my forces in the dark, but I have nothing at the moment, so I need weapons as a lure. However, Senior Mo, don't worry. I only need a small number of weapons in the beginning. Later on, I will naturally take out the materials and price to buy weapons from the Mirror Lake Manor." Mo Yezi waved his hand and said, "It's a small matter. My Mirror Lake Manor may not have many things, but it has a lot of weapons. If you want divine weapons, it might take some effort. However, there are some precious weapons. I and the others in the Mirror Lake Manor have countless precious weapons. You can take as many as you want." Luo Feihong shook his head and said, "This is a different matter. We still have to follow the rules of the Jianghu." After saying that, Luo Feihong looked at Chu Xiu and said, "As for Brother Chu, I want to borrow your reputation." Chu Xiu subconsciously rubbed his chin. He seemed to know what Luo Feihong wanted to do, so he asked, "The 9-branch division?" Luo Feihong nodded and said, "That's right. Although I have some reputation in the Jianghu, it's not as good as Brother Chu. Moreover, I know that I'm a woman, so I'm naturally weak. Brother Chu, when you said that we should work together to establish the 9-branch division, I only thought it was interesting. But now, I can feel the potential of the 9-branch division. Therefore, I want to borrow the reputation of the 9-branch division and Brother Chu to secretly recruit some people. If Brother Chu is at ease, then lend me your reputation. I dare say that within 3 years, I can make the 9-branch division have a heaven and earth turning change in both numbers and power." After saying that, Luo Feihong raised her head. Her charming face revealed a trace of confidence and pride. This made Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin feel a bit unfamiliar. This was because they had never seen this side of Luo Feihong. In the past, they knew that Luo Feihong was very strong, but that was all. More than that, they felt that Luo Feihong was a bit eccentric. As a woman, her actions were more manly than a man's. In the past, when they went to the brothel to drink, Luo Feihong, as a woman, would steal women with them. She was even more popular than them. Therefore, Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin had always thought that Luo Feihong was a maverick who loved women and pleasure. This kind of habit was very similar to Mo Tianlin. This was also the reason why Mo Tianlin and Luo Feihong could become good friends. However, Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin didn't know that people had two sides. When Luo Feihong became serious, her methods and abilities would definitely surpass everyone's imagination. Chu Xiu threw the 9-dragon coin in his hand to Luo Feihong and smiled, "I'll wait for that day." Towards Luo Feihong, Chu Xiu was very confident. In the original storyline, Luo Feihong was also chased by the Luo clan. In the end, she truly started from scratch and established the Bu Air Palace, developing it into a peak power in the underworld. It was dozens of times stronger than the previous Luo clan. And now, Luo Feihong's starting point was higher than in the previous life. If there were no accidents, the speed of her rise would also be faster than in the previous life. Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin didn't say much. The 9-branch division was originally proposed by Chu Xiu. Although Chu Xiu said that the 9-branch division didn't have a leader, as Chu Xiu's strength became stronger and his reputation in the underworld grew, Xie Xiaolu, Mo Tianlin, and the others subconsciously treated Chu Xiu as their leader. Although they didn't say it explicitly, it could be seen from some details and attitudes. In the underworld, strength was still the most important thing. Although they had a good relationship, strength was strength. As long as one was a martial artist, they would subconsciously take this as their priority. Since Luo Feihong had already made her decision, Chu Xiu and the others didn't say anything else. They chatted for a while more before leaving. In fact, the one who should feel the most melancholy was Mo Tianlin. Offending the Luo clan was a small matter for Chu Xiu and Xie Xiaolu, but for Mo Tianlin, the pressure from his clan would probably be huge. However, no one could help him with this. Only Mo Tianlin could bear it himself. After Chu Xiu left, he didn't return to Guangzhou. Instead, he first found a place to recuperate in eastern Qi. The Luo clan's matter was resolved, but his own grudge was not resolved. Nie Donglu was a slippery fellow. Chu Xiu had the strength to kill him, but he didn't have the opportunity to do so. However, this time, Crown Prince LV Longji's subordinates, Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan, attacked him. Chu Xiu didn't intend to let this matter go. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. If Chu Xiu wanted to take revenge, it would depend on his mood and the opportunity. Chu Xiu wasn't a magnanimous person. He didn't intend to let this matter rest. If others knew that Chu Xiu dared to take revenge on the Crown Prince of Eastern Qi in Eastern Qi's territory, they would definitely think that Chu Xiu was crazy. However, sometimes, things had to be looked at from another angle. So what if he was the Crown Prince of Eastern Qi? Before he became the Emperor, the Crown Prince was still the Crown Prince. Even in the original plot, the seemingly mediocre Emperor of Eastern Qi, Lu Haocheng, was still alive. At the very least, when Chu Xiu transmigrated, Lu Longji was still the Crown Prince. Moreover, in the land of Eastern Qi, there were many people who wanted to cause trouble for the Crown Prince. Chu Xiu was very good at taking advantage of the situation. As for whose situation he could take advantage of, the only person Chu Xiu was familiar with in the Eastern Qi imperial family was the second prince, Lu Longguang. Chu Xiu believed that as long as he made an appearance, it would be easy to borrow this person's power. Moreover, Chu Xiu had another thought in mind, and that was to seize Li Yuan's good fortune. Right now, Li Yuan wasn't very eye-catching in the Eastern Qi imperial court. He was just a small official in Eastern Qi. Even under the Crown Prince, Lu Longji, he was the Crown Prince's confidant, but his status couldn't be compared to Lu Longji's personal eunuch, Chen Do. If the current Li Yuan were to be evaluated by others, he would at most be someone with decent strength and ability. There was nothing outstanding about him. The only thing that allowed Li Yuan to soar into the sky and become the North Garrison King of Eastern Qi was the good fortune inheritance that he had obtained. Chu Xiu didn't know the exact time when Li Yuan obtained the inheritance, but in the original plot, Chu Xiu knew the approximate time and place. If he killed Li Yuan and waited at that place, would he be able to obtain the good fortune and inheritance on Li Yuan's behalf? This kind of thing was a little uncertain, but in any case, the first step was to kill Li Yuan. Then, Chu Xiu would go to that place to try his luck and see if he could obtain the inheritance that belonged to Li Yuan. After the plan was made, Chu Xiu recuperated for half a month. When his injuries had completely recovered to their peak, he went straight to Daliang city of Eastern Qi to look for the second prince, Lu Longguang. Chapter 449. Among the three countries, Eastern Qi was the largest and the most prosperous. As the capital city of Eastern Qi, Great Liang City was naturally the same. It was bustling with activity, and the city was filled with nobles and countless Jianghu experts. However, no one dared to cause trouble here. As the capital city of Eastern Qi was the most heavily guarded place. There were countless experts from the military and the imperial palace. Anyone who dared to cause trouble here would have to be tired of living. Chu Xiu wanted to find the second prince, LV Longguang, but he could not just meet him on a whim. He first had to find someone he was familiar with, and that person was Fang Zhenqi, the commander of the Breaking Edge Battalion. Every battalion of the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army was actually an independent existence, responsible for all kinds of tasks. Even the target they were loyal to was different. The Breaking Edge Battalion was not located outside the city, but in a mansion in the eastern part of Great Liang City. The mansion seemed very low-key. It was just a seemingly ordinary black mansion, with the words, Breaking Edge Battalion, written in large golden letters. There was also the dragon insignia of the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army. However, on the street outside the Breaking Edge Battalion's mansion, there were almost no martial artists coming or going. These martial artists were not idiots, and they knew what kind of place this was. This was the Dragon Riders' imperial army that belonged to the royal family of Eastern Qi. If they accidentally provoked them, they would not even know how they died. Chu Xiu knocked on the door, and 2 Dragon Riders' imperial army wearing black light armor immediately surrounded him. They sized up Chu Xiu and asked in an unfriendly tone, "Who are you?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Please go and inform Sir Fang that Chu Xiu has come to visit. He will know who I am." The 2 Dragon Riders' imperial army looked at each other. One of them went in to make the report, while the other stayed outside to keep an eye on Chu Xiu. Fortunately, Chu Xiu's strength was relatively strong, and he revealed the cultivation of the 5 Qis gathering in the origin. If it was anyone else, they would have been locked up and interrogated by the Dragon Riders' imperial army. The imperial Dragon Riders belonged to the imperial family, so if outsiders came looking for them, it would most likely not be a good thing. After a while, Fang Zhenqi walked out. Seeing that it was Chu Xiu, he asked in surprise, "Why are you here?" During the case of Qiu Zhenxing at the Pegasus Ranch, Fang Zhenqi had indeed dealt with Chu Xiu a lot. If it were not for Chu Xiu, the second prince would not have set the crown prince up. However, the cooperation between the 2 parties was only for mutual benefit. Chu Xiu was still a person from the Guanzhong torture room. Fang Zhenqi was a little surprised to see Chu Xiu again. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "It's not convenient here. Let's talk inside." Fang Zhenqi frowned, but he still invited Chu Xiu to a meeting hall and asked, "Can you tell me what's the matter now?" "I want to see the second prince," Chu Xiu said in a low voice. Fang Zhenqi frowned and was about to say something, but he heard Chu Xiu say, "Lord Fang, don't refuse, and don't ask me why I want to see the second prince. I can only say these words to the second prince. In short, it's good for the second prince, and there's no harm. Moreover, this is the great Liang city of Eastern Qi. I dare to play tricks in other places, but I don't dare to be presumptuous here. In that case, what is Lord Fang afraid of?" Fang Zhenqi felt that Chu Xiu's words made sense. Chu Xiu was only a cultivator at the 5 Qis unification stage. In the capital of Eastern Qi, even if he had any schemes, he wouldn't be able to carry them out. Therefore, Fang Zhenqi thought for a moment and brought Chu Xiu to the second prince, LV Longguang. LV Longguang had been conferred the title of King Liang, and his fief was the richest county in Qi, Liang County. However, apart from sending his trusted subordinates to manage the fief, LV Longguang rarely visited his own fief. He spent most of his time in Great Liang City or in the military. This made Crown Prince LV Longji gnash his teeth in hatred and fear. Lu Haochang had never forced LV Longguang to go to his fief. This proved that in Lu Hao's mind, there was no difference between the 2 of them. LV Longji, the Crown Prince, was merely a title. LV Longguang felt a little strange when he saw Chu Xiu again. The last time he saw Chu Xiu, LV Longguang's deepest impression of Chu Xiu was Chu Xiu's boldness and greed. At that time, Chu Xiu was just an inspector of the Guanzhong torture room. He could be considered as a relatively outstanding cultivator among the younger generation, but he wasn't considered to be in the upper echelons of the Guanzhong torture room. However, it was Chu Xiu who dared to negotiate with him, the second prince of Eastern Qi, and even extorted the forget-me-killing fist from him. This courage left a very deep impression on LV Longguang. Seeing that Chu Xiu had come to him again, LV Longguang couldn't help but ask, "Chu Xiu, why have you come to me this time? Could it be that you're prepared to rely on this king?" To be honest, if Chu Xiu was really willing to rely on him, LV Longguang would be very happy. After all, Chu Xiu's strength and potential were there for all to see. As long as one wasn't blind, they could see it. However, for LV Longguang, compared to strength and potential, Chu Xiu's current reputation was more important. He was a young hero ranked 6th on the Longhu list. If he could recruit Chu Xiu, he could directly push Chu Xiu to the public. Even the young hero ranked 6th on the Longhu list was willing to follow him. Wouldn't this make him look very virtuous? Chu Xiu smiled and shook his head. "Your Highness must be joking. Hall leader Guan has treated me well. How can I betray the Guanzhong torture room? Although I, Chu Xiu, am not a good person, I still know the word loyalty. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, LV Longguang's interest was greatly reduced. He leaned back on the chair and asked, "Then why did you come to see me this time? If you can't give me a proper explanation, then you're just making fun of me. You know the consequences." Chu Xiu lightly said, "Since I went through so much trouble to ask General Fong to bring me to see Your Highness, I naturally have something that can satisfy Your Highness." "But what is it?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "If I can help Your Highness attack the Crown Prince's reputation and weaken his strength, will Your Highness be satisfied?" Hearing Chu Xiu's words, LV Longguang immediately sat up straight and frowned. "You want to help me deal with the Crown Prince? Then what do you want?" LV Longguang still remembered Chu Xiu's character of not getting up early without benefits. Last time, when Chu Xiu brought out the evidence, LV Longguang had to pay the price of the annihilating heaven and destroying earth, annihilating oblivion, killing fist. Now, what did Chu Xiu want? Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I don't want anything. It's just that ever since I helped Your Highness last time, the Crown Prince bore a grudge against me. His subordinates have been causing me a lot of trouble. I'm a very vengeful person. It's not my character to not return the favor after being slapped in the face. If someone wants to cause trouble for me, then I'll return the favor and let them know the price of causing trouble for me. This matter has only happened recently. If Your Highness hasn't heard of it, you can ask others." LV Longguang really didn't know what happened to the Luo family. He was the second prince of Eastern Qi. Other than some major events in the martial world, he couldn't be bothered to care about them. Fighting for the throne and developing his own strength were the most important things to him. But just because he didn't know, it didn't mean that others didn't know. LV Longguang asked an old eunuch with a pale face behind him, "Eunuch Li, what's going on?" Eunuch Li immediately transmitted a message to LV Longguang, telling him everything that had happened to the Luo family. He also emphasized the fact that Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan, the Crown Prince's subordinates, had attacked Chu Xiu. LV Longguang nodded and looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look in his eyes. He said, "If that's the case, how are you going to help me deal with the Crown Prince? You only have the strength of the 5 Qis in the Origin Realm. I'd like to see if you can hurt the Crown Prince's foundation with your meager strength." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, you're wrong about one thing. I've said before that I'm here to help you deal with the Crown Prince. If I was alone, I could have easily left after taking my revenge. Why would I come here to look for Your Highness? It's because I don't have any power in Eastern Qi that I've come to look for Your Highness. I want to borrow Your Highness's strength to help you deal with the Crown Prince." LV Longguang was stunned when he heard this, and then anger appeared in his eyes. He sneered and said, "Chu Xiu, are you here to make fun of me? I thought you had something on the Crown Prince or had a plan. I didn't expect you to come here empty-handed. You don't have anything, and you want to borrow my strength to deal with the Crown Prince? What right do you have? If that's the case, I might as well do it myself. Why should I lend my strength to you?" Chu Xiu smiled, pointed to himself, and said word by word, "Because I'm Chu Xiu. To be frank, Your Highness, you have powerful subordinates like General Fong and Eunuch Li, but you can't find a single one who really has the ability to set up a trap. Otherwise, Your Highness wouldn't have been in a stalemate with the Crown Prince for so long. And I, Chu Xiu, was born in the wilderness, but in less than 2 years, I've gone from an inspector who just entered the Guanzhong torture room to a torture officer in charge of Guanxi. When my boss was in charge of Guanxi, discipline was lax, and the forces of Jianghu were rampant, to the point that they didn't even care about the Guanzhong torture room. But since I took over Guanxi, I, Chu Xiu, have been the only one who can speak. The same power can play a different role in the hands of different people. So this time, Your Highness, you can take a gamble and bet on your confidence in me. If Your Highness trusts me, then lend me some of your power. If Your Highness doesn't believe me, then I'll turn around and leave. I won't disturb Your Highness. I'll take revenge another day. It's all up to you, Your Highness." After Chu Xiu finished speaking, he looked at LV Longguang without saying a word. To be honest, his words not only stunned LV Longguang, but also Fang Zhenqi and Eunuch Li. They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen someone as arrogant as Chu Xiu. He was so full of himself. But thinking about it carefully, Chu Xiu was telling the truth. This was his military record, and it was also the reason why he could stand in front of LV Longguang and say these words. Chapter 450. LV Longguang sized up Chu Xiu without saying a word. If it had been someone else boasting so shamelessly in front of him, LV Longguang would have directly thrown that person out. However, this person was Chu Xiu. Just as Chu Xiu had said, his experience in the Guanxi region and his current status were proof of Chu Xiu's ability. This was confidence and also a fact. Whether or not to trust Chu Xiu was something that LV Longguang had to consider. After a long while, LV Longguang asked with a sullen face, "If I lend you my power, but you screw it up, what should I do?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "If I take action, I won't screw it up. There are no ifs. Besides, I'm not your subordinate, so there's no need for me to make a military pledge here. I've said before that if your highness has confidence in me, then hand over the power to me. If not, then I'll turn around and leave. Promises are just empty words before things are done. Also, I have something else to say. Your highness, you and the crown prince have to fight it out. Last time, you won with his majesty, but what about now? Therefore, even without me, I reckon that your highness will still make a move against the crown prince. Now, it's just that I'm the leader, so there's not much difference." LV Longguang pondered for a moment. Perhaps his previous deal with Chu Xiu had given him some confidence. He said in a deep voice, "All right, I'll believe you this time. However, you have to tell me what your plan is first. Similarly, I'll also send Fang Jinqi and Eunuch Li to follow you. This king has never liked to play tricks. I'll make it clear in advance. If you want power, I'll give it to you. However, Fang Jinqi and Eunuch Li are here to monitor you. As long as you don't do anything that harms this king's interests, the two of them will only monitor you and listen to your commands. They will not interfere with your actions." Regarding LV Longguang's decision, Chu Xiu didn't say much. If LV Longguang really believed him unconditionally, then either LV Longguang was stupid or there was something fishy about it. Therefore, Chu Xiu just nodded and said, "Your highness should do this." "All right, tell me about the first step of your plan," LV Longguang said in a deep voice. Chu Xiu said, "The first step of the plan is actually very simple. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. I need information about the crown prince and his trusted subordinates." Eunuch Li, who was at the side, said in a sharp voice, "Official Chu, don't worry. We have intelligence on the crown prince's side. Recently, the crown prince has been very low-key. Nothing major has happened." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not enough. This information isn't enough at all." Eunuch Li frowned and said, "What do you mean by this, Official Chu? Could it be that you doubt the accuracy of our information?" "The crown prince has just been reprimanded by his majesty, and he's keeping a low profile and enduring patiently right now. How could he possibly do anything?" LV Longguang had fought the crown prince for so many years, so he naturally knew the importance of information. So, the information under his command was managed by Eunuch Li. Now, when he heard Chu Xiu speak in this way, it seemed as if Chu Xiu didn't trust him, and this caused Eunuch Li to instantly be slightly displeased. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "Eunuch Li, please don't take offense. I'm not saying that your information is wrong, but it's too little. Eunuch Li, your subordinates are limited, so things like information have to be obtained from specialized places. Only there would you be able to obtain extremely accurate and detailed information." But Eunuch Li was bewildered. Wind-sweeping pavilion. Before Southbridge City's wind-sweeping pavilion, Chu Xiu had just left not too long ago, yet he'd returned at this moment. If it was in terms of information, then no power in the world could compare to wind-sweeping pavilion, and the information gathered by Eunuch Li's subordinates could only be considered as gossip in the underworld when compared to wind-sweeping pavilion. So, Chu Xiu's first step was naturally to come to wind-sweeping pavilion to obtain information. Fang Jinqi and Eunuch Li were following behind Chu Xiu. Both of them were great experts at the unity stage. According to LV Longguang, even though they usually listened to Chu Xiu's commands, The meaning behind their actions was very obvious, and it was to monitor Chu Xiu in the open. When they arrived at the entrance of Wind-Sweeping Pavilion, Chu Xiu said to Eunuch Li, "Eunuch Li, please wait here. I'll enter Wind-Sweeping Pavilion with Lord Fong." Eunuch Li frowned and said, "What's the meaning of this? You're not allowing me to enter as well?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Eunuch Li, please don't take it to heart. Wind-Sweeping Pavilion is a sect in the underworld after all, and it's rather sensitive towards members of the imperial family. It's fine for me to follow Lord Fong who's changed into casual clothes, but Eunuch Li, even if you've changed your clothes, the characteristics of a member of the imperial family are still very obvious, and it's easy for Wind-Sweeping Pavilion to misunderstand." Southbridge City was the headquarters of Wind-Sweeping Pavilion, and there were many grandmasters in the martial Dao here. So, it was practically obvious that Eunuch Li was a eunuch with a single glance. Even though there were many people in the underworld that cultivated themselves into eunuchs, there were only a few who were willing to castrate themselves for the sake of refining their divine palaces. Most eunuchs were from the imperial palace. Eunuch Li grunted lightly, yet he didn't flare up. Chu Xiu had a sense of propriety when he spoke. He didn't directly say that he was afraid the members of Wind-Sweeping Pavilion would notice that Eunuch Li was a eunuch, so they wouldn't allow him to enter. Instead, he directly said that Eunuch Li was a member of the imperial family, and this caused Eunuch Li to have a rather good impression of him. Even though he was a eunuch, he hated terms such as eunuch and eunuch. Chu Xiu brought Fang Zhenqi into Wind-Sweeping Pavilion. The martial artist who welcomed Chu Xiu last time saw Chu Xiu again, and he hurriedly went up to greet him with a chuckle. "Official Chu, what news do you intend to buy from my Wind-Sweeping Pavilion again?" Chu Xiu said, "It's a big deal this time. I'll have to trouble you to invite Pavilion Master Qi over." If it was an ordinary martial artist at the 5 Qi's origin stage, it would be very difficult for Chu Xiu to personally invite a grandmaster like Qi Yuanli to discuss business even with his status. However, when this martial artist saw the scene of Qi Yuanli personally welcoming Chu Xiu last time, he thought that there was some relationship between Qi Yuanli and Chu Xiu. So this time, he swiftly brought Chu Xiu and Fang Zhenqi to a guest room, and he hurriedly went to invite Qi Yuanli over. Qi Yuanli frowned when he heard that Chu Xiu wanted to see him again. The last time he gave Chu Xiu a piece of information, it was because he wanted to form a good relationship with him. This time, Chu Xiu came again. This time, he really didn't know what was good for him. Did he really think that Wind-Sweeping Pavilion was a charity that was willing to give away anything? However, Qi Yuanli did not show it. He still smiled and pushed the door open. "Chu, what news are you here to buy this time? Actually, if it's not big news, you can just buy it from your subordinates. You don't have to come to me every time." Qi Yuanli also saw Fang Zhenqi at this time, but he did not know who Fang Zhenqi was. Although Wind-Sweeping Pavilion sold information, it was not to the extent that they could recognize a random person's identity. Chu Xiu did not have time to exchange pleasantries with Qi Yuanli. He went straight to the point and said, "Pavilion Master Qi, I'm here to discuss a big business with you this time. This business needs to be done by you." Qi Yuanli frowned. "What big business?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "It's about the Eastern Qi royal family's business. Pavilion Master Qi, do you dare to do it?" Qi Yuanli's eyebrows twitched when he heard that. This business was really big. What kind of news about the royal family? If you are talking about the entire royal family, then I'm sorry. Even if Guan Siyu came personally, I wouldn't dare to sell it. Chu Xiu shook his head. "Of course I don't have such a big appetite. What I want is information about the crown prince. The more detailed, the better. You should have that, right?" When he heard that Chu Xiu only wanted information about the crown prince, Qi Yuanli heaved a sigh of relief. "I do have that." Qi Yuanli looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. He vaguely guessed why Chu Xiu wanted information about the crown prince. The Luo family's matter was just a small matter to LV Longguang, so it wasn't worth mentioning. However, to the people of the underworld, it was gossip material. He naturally knew that Chu Xiu had been besieged by the crown prince's subordinates. However, Qi Yuanli added, "Chu, the crown prince is the crown prince of Eastern Qi, after all. There is a lot of detailed information about him, and there are many secret items. If you want them, they will be very expensive. Chu Xiu glanced at Fang Zhenqi, and Fang Zhenqi immediately took out the purple gold from his secret space box. Although he wanted to take revenge, LV Longguang would also benefit from it. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't pay for the information himself. The purple gold in Fang Zhenqi's hands was neatly smelted into the shape of gold bricks. Each brick weighed more than 100 taels. As Fang Zhenqi piled up the purple gold bricks on the table, Qi Yuanli hurriedly said, "That's enough. It's enough." He glanced at Fang Zhenqi in surprise. This guy was really generous. This was purple gold after all. To be able to smelt it into purple gold bricks so neatly, he must have a powerful background. However, Qi Yuanli didn't ask too much. Wind Sweeping Tower was usually the most gossipy faction, and they wanted to collect all kinds of information. However, they were very tight-lipped when it came to their own guests. Qi Yuanli asked someone to bring a jade book and copied all the information about the Crown Prince. He imprinted it into a simple cultivation jade slip and handed it to Chu Xiu. Qi Yuanli said in a low voice, "Chu, this contains the information you want. However, this is related to the royal family, so it's best not to spread it. Of course, even if it does, it will have nothing to do with Wind Sweeping Tower. As long as Chu steps out of Wind Sweeping Tower's doors, everything will have nothing to do with Wind Sweeping Tower." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Don't worry, Tower Master Qi. I know the rules." With that, Chu Xiu left Wind Sweeping Tower with Fang Zhenqi. After meeting up with Eunuch Li, the three of them read the contents of the jade slip together. After reading it, Eunuch Li's forehead was covered in sweat. Only now did he realize how far behind Wind Sweeping Tower was in terms of collecting information. He actually didn't notice so many movements on the Crown Prince's side. This was a dereliction of duty. Chapter 451. Back in Great Liang City, LV Longguang asked Chu Xiu, "Did the Crown Prince really make a move?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Eunuch Li and the others have also seen the news. Your Highness can directly ask Eunuch Li." Eunuch Li's expression was a bit ugly as he cupped his hands at LV Longguang and said, "Your Highness, this old servant has failed in his duties. The Crown Prince has indeed made a big move recently. Ever since the Crown Prince was punished by the Emperor to reflect at home, the Crown Prince has been very honest and low-key on the surface, but in reality, the Crown Prince has secretly sent people to contact all the wild powers in the southwest. The 5 families, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds, wanting to bring them all under his command. Once he succeeds, the Crown Prince will completely control the southwest and even control most of the trade routes between West Chu and our eastern Qi. The southwest that Eunuch Li spoke of was an area close to the west of eastern Qi, close to the 10,000 mountains. Although the area was large, it was sparsely populated, making it seem desolate and barbaric. There were no counties set up there and it was only known as the Southwest. There were only a few states within it. Originally, this place could be said to be looked down upon by no one, but in the last several hundred years, this place had become an important trade route between West Chu and Eastern Qi. Although there were many barren mountains and dense forests, making the road difficult to traverse, the distance was very close, so there were many merchants coming and going. This place gradually became popular with merchants and naturally formed a power. It was the 5 families, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds that Eunuch Li spoke of. Although there were nearly 50 of these powers, their strength was not very strong. After all, the oldest of them was only 100 years old. But regardless of whether these powers were strong or not, once they joined the Crown Prince's command, it would be a huge boost to the Crown Prince's power. Moreover, because the Crown Prince already controlled a strong trade route, his own income would also increase crazily. For LV Longguang, this was definitely not a good thing. LV Longguang sneered and said, "Not only did he collude with Jianghu Yuan, but now my eldest brother dares to collude with these wild powers in the southwest. He really doesn't know what's good for him. This prince will go to father and report him. I'm sure he won't be able to bear the consequences." At this time, Chu Xiu said lightly, "Your Highness should calm down first. It's useless for you to go. Perhaps you will be reprimanded by His Majesty. LV Longguang frowned and said, Why? Chu Xiu said, This time, His Highness the Crown Prince's actions are different from last time. Jiang Wenyuan's identity was special. If the Crown Prince cooperated with him, it would be a taboo. Now that the Crown Prince was recruiting these ruffians, the meaning was completely different. Although the Jianghu and the court stand in opposition, it is not impossible for them to work together. Your Highness, do not forget the battle between Northern Yan and Eastern Qi. At that time, the Northern Yan was able to win because the Northern Yan royal family worked together with the Northern Yan martial arts forces. Now, His Majesty has also realized his previous mistake and has begun to take the initiative to cooperate with the martial arts forces of Eastern Qi. Even the White Tiger Hall has been merged with Eastern Qi. You should know this, Your Highness. Therefore, now the Crown Prince's behavior is no longer a big deal to His Majesty. He will even praise the Crown Prince for being flexible. If Your Highness were to complain about this matter now, I'm afraid you will be the one reprimanded because you failed to understand His Majesty's meaning. LV Longguang was not stupid. After hearing Chu Xiu's explanation, he immediately understood. LV Longguang was so angry that he crushed a teacup and said coldly, This plan is definitely not something that my useless eldest brother could come up with. There must be someone around him who gave him the idea. Chu Xiu said calmly, It doesn't matter if there is someone who gave the Crown Prince the idea or not. Anyway, as long as the plan is completed, the Crown Prince's power will increase greatly. LV Longguang waved his hand and looked at Chu Xiu. He said in a deep voice, What kind of power do you want? I can give it to you. There is only one condition, and that is to completely mess up the Crown Prince's plan. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, Of course it's an elite force. Lord Feng's Dragon Riders and Eunuch Li's subordinates should also have a group of people. Lend them to me, and I promise to give Your Highness a satisfactory result. This time, LV Longguang did not hesitate. He waved his hand and said in a deep voice, All right. From today onwards, Feng Jinqi and Eunuch Li's subordinates, including the two of them, will listen to your orders. Walking out of the prince's mansion, Eunuch Li asked Chu Xiu, Official Chu, what should we do now? Eunuch Li had made a mistake in the matter of wind-sweeping brothel, so his attitude towards Chu Xiu had become much more humble. Feng Jinqi did not say anything. The Dragon Riders' imperial army was strict in their orders. Since His Highness had already said to listen to Chu Xiu, he would naturally do whatever Chu Xiu wanted him to do. As long as Chu Xiu did not threaten His Highness's interests, he would definitely not have any objections. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, The 5 factions, 8 families, 10 sects, and 23 strongholds. To put it bluntly, these powers are just a motley crew with clay chickens and pottery dogs. If His Highness's subordinates were to go all out, it would not be difficult to kill them. However, doing so would cause too much of a commotion, and it would be easy for the Crown Prince to notice. Secondly, it would affect His Highness's reputation. Eunuch Li frowned and said, You said it yourself. There are no top-notch sects among those dozens of powers. They are just a motley crew. How could they affect His Highness's reputation? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, Don't forget His Highness's identity. The imperial court massacring the martial arts sects is a very sensitive matter. Unless His Highness does not wish to have any cooperation with the martial arts sects in the future, it is better to be cautious about this matter. Eunuch Li was born in the imperial palace. Eastern Qi trained eunuchs in batches. They were mainly taught how to serve their masters, and martial arts were secondary. As for abilities and whatnot, no one taught them those things. It was all up to them to comprehend on their own. Therefore, although Eunuch Li was much older than Chu Xiu and had been by LV Longguang's side for so many years, in terms of seeing the big picture, he was really not as good as Chu Xiu. Hearing that Chu Xiu had considered more than him, Eunuch Li did not say anything. He said directly, Since official Chu has considered all these, then tell us your plan. Lord Feng and I will assist official Chu from the side. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, There is no hurry. There are 5 schools, 8 families, 10 factions, and 23 strongholds. There are dozens of powers, and it is impossible for them to be of the same mind. Sometimes, attacking the enemy from the inside is easier than attacking from the outside. The intelligence given to us by Wind Sweeping Tower is very complete, and there is even a general information on these dozens of powers. Let me pick a few targets first, and then slowly make arrangements. There is still time. At this time, Chu Xiu's expression was somewhat gloomy. Eunuch Li, who had always been known for his feminine temperament, felt a chill in his heart. In terms of killing people, as LV Longguang's personal eunuch, Eunuch Li might not have killed fewer people than Chu Xiu. But in terms of those who had indirectly died in the hands of Chu Xiu, Eunuch Li could not compare to Chu Xiu. 3 days later, in one of the largest brothels in Great Liang City, Emerald Jade Pavilion, Chu Xiu, Fang Zhenqi, and Eunuch Li were sitting in a private room drinking wine, but they did not ask for a single girl. Fang Zhenqi was fine, but Eunuch Li was sitting there feeling uncomfortable. He was a eunuch. Why did he come to such a place? If His Highness had not ordered him to listen to Chu Xiu, Eunuch Li would definitely think that Chu Xiu was humiliating him. Just when Eunuch Li felt extremely uncomfortable and wanted to ask Chu Xiu what he was doing here, Chu Xiu knocked on the table and made a gesture to keep quiet. With his eyes slightly closed, a powerful spiritual force bloomed from Chu Xiu's body like silk threads, spreading in all directions. At this moment, Fang Zhenqi and Eunuch Li were shocked. What a terrifying spiritual force! Fang Zhenqi and Eunuch Li were both experts at the unity of heaven and man realm, but even they could feel the strength of Chu Xiu's spiritual force. It was so strong that it made them tremble. Even if the people of the Xiahou clan came, their spiritual force would not be comparable to Chu Xiu's. In fact, although Chu Xiu's spiritual force was strong before, it was not strong to this extent. But after killing Zhang Chufan and obtaining the orthodox inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall, the great art of mental demons rotation and the 9 major forms of soul assimilation, Chu Xiu's spiritual force could be said to have directly skyrocketed to another realm. The martial arts of the Demon Heart Hall could be said to coexist with evil and miraculous. The great art of mental demons rotation was a method that specialized in cultivating spiritual force, while the 9 major forms of soul assimilation was an existence that combined spiritual force with martial arts and even Buddhist martial arts, which was even more miraculous. Now, if Chu Xiu fought with Xiahou Wujiang again, even if he only used spiritual force, he could completely crush Xiahou Wujiang. At this time, Chu Xiu's spiritual force had also undergone a strange change. His spiritual force was like a coiled silk thread, spreading to other places in the Emerald Jade Pavilion like a spider's web, light and yet tough. Except for the martial arts grand masters or the experts who specialized in spiritual force, no one could notice this change. And at this time, in the Emerald Jade Pavilion, there was naturally no such person. This move was one of the 9 major soul techniques, the Silk Soul Net. According to the inheritance of the cultivation technique, when one mastered this technique, they could use it with all their strength, and everyone within a radius of several thousand feet would be enveloped by this soul net. Every single thread could entangle a martial artist's soul and Yuan Shun, instantly taking a person's life. Of course, the current Chu Xiu was still very far away from this level. At present, this cultivation method was only used by Chu Xiu to eavesdrop. All the sounds in the entire Emerald Jade Pavilion were transmitted to Chu Xiu through the Silk Soul Net and reflected into Chu Xiu's mind. Then, Chu Xiu separated 2 strands of spiritual force and transmitted them to Fang Zhenqi and Eunuch Li. After blocking out the chaotic sounds, 2 familiar voices once again appeared in Chu Xiu's and the other's ears. One was Eunuch Qin, and the other was Li Yuan. Chapter 452. Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan were also in the Emerald Jade Pavilion's box, and it was not too far from the box where Chu Xiu and the others were. In addition to Eunuch Chen, there was also a young man in his 20s in the box. His strength had not even reached the innate realm, and his behavior was frivolous and sloppy. Li Yuan looked at the young man with a hint of contempt, but he still said politely, "Did young Master Zheng have a good time in Daliang City? Tomorrow, young Master Zheng will return to the southwest. At that time, please tell Master Zheng about your experience in Daliang City. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is very sincere. Young Master Zheng laughed and said, well said, well said. Since His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is so generous, I will definitely tell my father when I go back. Let the Iron Sword clan follow His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and live well in the future. At this time, young Master Zheng's face showed a trace of wretchedness and said, since I am leaving tomorrow, I must have a good time today. My expenses in the Emerald Jade Pavilion? Li Yuan's eyes showed a trace of disgust, but he still said with a smile, young Master Zheng, just enjoy yourself. I have already told the boss that all your expenses here will be recorded in my account. Young Master Zheng laughed and said, Lord Li is very kind. Then I won't stand on ceremony. As he spoke, young Master Zheng directly pushed the door open and shouted, where is the madam? Hurry up and find me girls, I want 6, no, 10. I want them to be tall and have big breasts. The Emerald Jade Pavilion was the top brothel in Daliang City. It was not an ordinary brothel. Those who came here were all high-ranking officials and nobles, and they were all people of status. It was really rare to find someone as vulgar as young Master Zheng. Someone was angry and wanted to say something, but when they saw that young Master Zheng came out of the box and was told who the box belonged to, they immediately dared not say anything. Although Li Yuan was not a big shot in the Eastern Qi Imperial Court, he was the confidant of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Offending Li Yuan was the same as offending the Crown Prince. Therefore, in the city of Daliang, there were not many who dared to offend Li Yuan. After young Master Zheng left, Li Yuan closed the door and sneered disdainfully, Iron Sword sect Master Zheng Tiantu can be considered a character. With a broken iron sword, he founded Iron Sword sect and became the head of the 5 sects in the southwest. Who would have thought that his son would be so disappointing? Wine, women, avarice, and arrogance, as if he has never seen the world. This time, the Crown Prince was prepared to recruit people from the 5 schools, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds. In reality, the Crown Prince had already made his move. The 5 schools, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds were ranked according to the former. The 5 schools were the strongest, while the 23 strongholds were almost all bandits and were the weakest. Among them, Iron Sword sect was the head of the 5 schools. Sect Master Zheng Tiantu was an expert half a step to the supreme power realm. In the wilderness of the southwest, which was full of dense forests, he relied on a broken iron sword to become the head of the 5 schools. He was definitely a character, and he was also the person that the Crown Prince paid special attention to. Now, it was almost certain that he was ready to rely on the Crown Prince. Because of this, he sent his own son, Zheng Qingyong, to let him experience Daliang City and see the Crown Prince's final sincerity. These days, Li Yuan and Eunuch Qin had brought Zheng Qingyong to eat, drink, and have fun. They wanted to completely win him over and make Iron Sword sect sincerely submit to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. However, this young Master Zheng was really too inexperienced. He was obsessed with wine, women, avarice, and anger. He was like a lecherous demon. Some of his actions in the past few days made Li Yuan feel extremely embarrassed. If not for His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's instructions, he would not want to accompany such a useless person to wander around. Eunuch Qin said slowly, calm down. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is only doing this for his father, Zheng Tiantu. The more useless this Zheng Qingyong is, the better. As long as he is won over, Iron Sword sect will definitely stand on His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's side. 5 schools, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds. As long as more than half of these forces stand on our side, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince will succeed. Iron Sword sect is the head of the 5 schools and is a target that we must recruit. Li Yuan snorted softly and said, I know. Then let him be free and unrestrained for another day. He is just a country bumpkin who has never seen the world. He will not be able to enjoy the bustling scene of Great Liang City in the southwest. At this time, Li Yuan suddenly thought of something. He took out a brocade box and handed it to Eunuch Qin, saying, Eunuch Qin, This is the South Sea Black Pearl that His Royal Highness asked me to collect last time. He said that he wanted to give it to Miss Qingqing. It is not appropriate for me to enter Miss Qingqing's chamber, so I hope Eunuch Chen can help me pass it to her." Hearing Li Yuan's words, Eunuch Chen immediately frowned. That Miss Qingqing was the Emerald Jade Pavilion's top courtesan, Han Qingqing. Long ago, she was fancied by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Since then, she had become His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's exclusive property. She no longer solicited guests, but she still lived in the Emerald Jade Pavilion. It was not that LV Longji was stingy, but he was the Crown Prince after all. It would be fine if he took a commoner as his concubine, but if he married a prostitute, it would not sound good. Therefore, he could only sneak around like this. Eunuch Chen frowned and said, "His Royal Highness has many enemies. At this time, he should focus on developing his own strength. What is the meaning of being infatuated with a prostitute all day long? Not only will it affect his energy, but it will also be easy for others to use against him. Li Yuan, you must find a chance to talk to His Royal Highness about this." Li Yuan only smiled and did not say much. It was not his first day with the Crown Prince, so he naturally knew what should be said and what should not be said. Regarding the Crown Prince's private matters, he could not interfere with others' words, but Li Yuan would definitely not say anything. Eunuch Chen was also a sly old fox. One look at Li Yuan's expression and he knew what he meant. However, he did not say much and only snorted softly. He took the brocade box and turned to leave. Li Yuan also left. At this time, in the private room where Chu Xiu and the others were, Chu Xiu retracted his soul string net. Eunuch Li's expression was gloomy as he said, "I did not expect the Crown Prince to actually take things to this step. Official Chu, what should we do now?" Chu Xiu did not say anything. He only made a shushing gesture to Eunuch Li. At this time, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen had already left. Zheng Qingyong was here playing with a woman, so they were not in the mood to watch. Therefore, Chu Xiu swaggered into the Jade Pavilion. He opened the door of Zheng Qingyong's private room and was greeted by a flesh-colored wave. It was tall and bumpy, which made people dizzy. Zheng Qingyong was 1 against 10, so he was quite good at playing. However, Chu Xiu's heart was not disturbed at all. Before he transmigrated, Chu Xiu was also a person who had seen the world. What kind of movies had he not seen and what kind of games had he not seen? Zheng Qingyong was just a small thing. Zheng Qingyong was startled when he was suddenly interrupted. However, before he could curse, he saw that Chu Xiu's eyes were as deep as an abyss, pulling him in. The other women had also fallen into a deep sleep. Using the skill of extinguishing heaven, destroying earth and soul transfer to deal with a warrior who had not even reached the innate realm was child's play. At this time, Zheng Qingyong was like a puppet in Chu Xiu's hands, without the slightest autonomy. After putting on his clothes, Zheng Qingyong followed behind Chu Xiu in a daze and went straight to the top floor of the Jade Pavilion. The top floor had long been closed to the public, because it was the residence of the top beauty, Han Qingqing. The Crown Prince had treated Han Qingqing quite well and had even specially assigned 2 Xiantian realm cultivators to stand guard here. However, when faced with Chu Xiu, the 2 cultivators did not even make a sound before they were completely controlled by the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul shifting. With their memories wiped, they would not remember that anyone had ever been to the top floor. At this time, in the room on the top floor, a beautiful woman was playing with a black pearl in a brocade box. Her eyes showed a look of surprise. This woman was Han Qingqing. Although she was the top beauty of the Jade Pavilion, a prostitute was still a prostitute. Han Qingqing had never thought that one day she would be chosen by the Crown Prince. Even at this time, Han Qingqing was still fantasizing in her heart. Could she succeed in the future and become the Crown Prince's wife? At this time, the door of the room was pushed open. As soon as Han Qingqing raised her head, she saw a pair of eyes as dark as ink and lost consciousness. Chu Xiu patted Zheng Qingyong's shoulder, and Zheng Qingyong immediately pounced on Han Qingqing. Chu Xiu turned around and went out, closing the door. Immediately, there were sounds of heavy breathing coming from inside. After a few minutes, the sound of heavy breathing inside stopped. Chu Xiu pushed the door open and saw Jing Qingyong still holding the unconscious Han Qingqing in his arms. He had a confused expression on his face, and he thought he was having a wet dream. As a country bumpkin from the southwest, when had Jing Qingyong seen such a prosperous place like Great Liang City? Almost as soon as he arrived here, he was indulging in pleasure. When Li Yuan had brought him to the Jade Pavilion, he had seen Han Qingqing once. At that time, Jing Qingyong had wanted to sleep with this woman, but Li Yuan had warned him. After all, she was the crown prince's woman, and whoever touched her would die. As the top beauty of the Jade Pavilion, Han Qingqing's appearance was naturally one of the best in the Jade Pavilion. Since then, Jing Qingyong had been yearning for her. However, although Jing Qingyong was a good-for-nothing, he was not an idiot. He knew which women he could touch and which women he could not. But when he woke up this time, the women around him were gone, and the one he was holding was Han Qingqing. Could it be that he was still having a wet dream? At this time, seeing Chu Xiu push open the door, Jing Qingyong suddenly thought of something. He was about to cry out in surprise, but Chu Xiu directly revealed his 5 qis in the origin state, and the powerful evil blood qi that he had condensed was surrounding him. The killing intent made Jing Qingyong shiver all over. Looking at Jing Qingyong, Chu Xiu said lightly, "First, shut up. Second, put on your clothes. I don't like talking to naked men. If you can't do these 2 things, I will kill you." Chapter 453. It was true that Jing Qingyong was a good-for-nothing. Moreover, he was a greedy and lustful person who could not do anything and could not eat enough of anything. However, Jing Qingyong was someone who had come from the wilderness of the southwest. He had an advantage over most warriors, and that was that he could adapt to the circumstances. In the wilderness of the southwest, there were very few large cities and prefectures. There were dense forests and wilderness everywhere. The bandits of the 23 stockade villages killed people and plundered their goods, and the land was stained with blood. Jing Qingyong's father, Jing Tiantu, had risen to power in such an environment. Therefore, although Jing Qingyong's cultivation was not good, he knew one thing. When faced with a powerful force that he could not match, the first thing he had to do was admit defeat. Therefore, under Chu Xiu's murderous aura, Jing Qingyong immediately shut his mouth and put on his clothes as fast as he could. Then, he looked at Chu Xiu with an unusually obedient expression. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Do you know who the woman beside you is?" Jing Qingyong nodded. It seemed that he had not yet realized that he had slept with the crown prince's woman. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "In this world, there are not many people who can make the crown prince a cuckold. Now that you have done it, don't you feel a sense of accomplishment?" Only then did Jing Qingyong realize what he had done. His face immediately revealed a look of horror. He had slept with the crown prince's woman. This feeling was really good. It was so good that Jing Qingyong did not know what to say now. If someone had made him a cuckold, Jing Qingyong would definitely make that person suffer a fate worse than death if he had the chance. Because of this, he knew what his fate would be. However, at this time, Jing Qingyong suddenly realized something. He directly knelt down in front of Chu Xiu and said with a sobbing tone, "Hero, save me. I will do anything you ask of me." Although Jing Qingyong was a good-for-nothing, he was not a fool. Although he had lost a part of his memory, he knew that everything he had done now was inextricably linked to this demon-like fellow in front of him. The other party wouldn't be so bored as to let him sleep with the crown prince's women. Right now, everything was in the hands of the other party. As long as he could live, he was willing to do anything. His father had just stabilized his influence not too long ago. The Iron Sword sect was the head of the 5 sects in the southwest region. Even if he, the eldest young master of the Iron Sword sect, was trash, he could still live a comfortable life. He could not bear to die. Chu Xiu stretched out a finger and said, "First, I'm not a hero. Second, your life and death are not in my hands, but in your father's hands. You won't understand even if I say more. You just need to remember one thing. I'm the second prince's man. When we return to Iron Sword sect, all you need to do is tell your father everything that happened today. He will understand. All right, clean up this place. When this woman wakes up, she won't remember anything. But whether or not she will never remember what happened today depends on your father's attitude. Sometimes, don't choose sides too early. After saying that, Chu Xiu turned around and left, leaving behind a dumbfounded Zheng Qingyong, who wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. After returning to their private room, Eunuch Li and Fang Zhenqi stared at Chu Xiu, dumbfounded. They did not know what to say. Although they did not participate in what happened earlier, they had all witnessed it. It had to be said that Chu Xiu's methods were a little too dirty. It was very underhanded. However, it had to be said that this move was quite effective. What would the Crown Prince do if the person he wanted to recruit was cuckolded? If the Crown Prince could tolerate such a thing, could he still be considered a man? If the Crown Prince could not bear to do it, then all the effort he had put in to recruit Iron Sword sect would be in vain. Hence, the Crown Prince was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Chu Xiu's move was rather vicious. There was a trace of fear in Eunuch Li's eyes as he looked at Chu Xiu. He could still remember the first time he met Chu Xiu. Back then, Chu Xiu had dared to use evidence to exchange for the sky-extinguishing earth-annihilating oblivion-killing fist from LV Longguang. Back then, LV Longguang had asked Eunuch Li what his impression of Chu Xiu was. Eunuch Li's evaluation of Chu Xiu was that Chu Xiu was bold, decisive and greedy. Now, however, Eunuch Li had to add another label to Chu Xiu. Unscrupulous. For Chu Xiu, he only cared about the results, not the process. As long as he could accomplish his goal, Chu Xiu would do anything. He was a person who had no bottom line. Such a person was the most terrifying. Fortunately, Chu Xiu was currently standing on his side. At the same time, Eunuch Li was sneering in secret. This time, the Crown Prince had lost his mind. After such a long time, he still came to provoke Chu Xiu. In the past, the Crown Prince had deliberately put on an appearance of being courteous and magnanimous. Even if there was some friction, he wouldn't easily cause trouble for others. Of course, this matter was not LV Longji's fault. It was because LV Longji did not know about it at all. If Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen had really killed Chu Xiu or seriously injured Chu Xiu in the Luo family, then they would have reported it to LV Longji and regarded it as their own contribution. But in the end, they failed. Since that was the case, why would they tell others about it? It was not shameful enough. As Eunuch Li thought about it, he shook off these thoughts and asked Chu Xiu, "Official Chu, should we report this matter to the Crown Prince?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Why should we report it to the Crown Prince? Don't think too highly of the Iron Sword sect. If worse comes to worst, the Crown Prince can just give up on recruiting the Iron Sword sect in a fit of anger. There are 5 sects, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds. There are so many forces in the southwest. We can just change our target. The Iron Sword sect is just the beginning. Eunuch Li, Lord Fang, it's time to make a move. Show us everyone's strength." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Eunuch Li did not ask any more questions. Instead, he and Fang Zhenqi brought their subordinates over. Through this matter, Eunuch Li and Fang Zhenqi had witnessed Chu Xiu's ruthless methods. Naturally, they did not have any more doubts and left it all to Chu Xiu to handle. Fang Zhenqi's subordinates were a battalion of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, numbering over 300 men. Despite the small number, every one of them was an elite. Even the weakest among them was at the Xiantian realm. Moreover, the most important thing was not their cultivation level, but the combat prowess of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. When they were training in the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, they had already experienced hundreds of battles. Later on, when they were assigned to LV Longguang, they had also experienced countless missions. As he sized up the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, Chu Xiu suddenly felt a little emotional. In the past, his cheapskate father was a member of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. To be more precise, he was just an ordinary soldier, not even a corporal. However, such an ordinary soldier was able to proclaim himself as a tyrant in a small place after leaving the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, becoming the head of a family. From this, one could imagine just how powerful the Dragon Rider Imperial Army was. Other than the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, Eunuch Li's subordinates were also the second prince's elites. Compared to the Dragon Rider Imperial Army, the quality of these people was somewhat uneven. Most of them were unaffiliated cultivators, and in the end, they were recruited by the second prince. Some of their strength was not that bad, but there were also some whose strength was a bit lacking. However, Eunuch Li's group had a great advantage. They had over 600 people, which was double the number of the Dragon Rider Imperial Army. Moreover, even the weakest among them was at the Xiantian realm. These close to 1,000 people were the power that LV Longguang had lent to Chu Xiu. Of course, in reality, LV Longguang's subordinates would definitely be much more powerful than they were now. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "I'll have to trouble the two of you to bring these people to the southwest. Remember, your movements must be careful. Otherwise, if the Crown Prince discovers your tracks, don't blame me." Fang Zhenqi and Eunuch Li both nodded. They were not idiots, so they naturally knew to pay attention to this. Right now, they were in the dark, and the Crown Prince was in the light. Of course, they had to be careful, and they could not be discovered by the Crown Prince. Fang Zhenqi and Eunuch Li followed behind. Chu Xiu was a step ahead of them, and he followed Zheng Qingyong to the southwest. The land of Eastern Qi was rich and prosperous, but the further southwest one went, the less people there were, and the more wilderness and dense forest there were. By the time they truly reached the southwest, there was not a single capital for hundreds of miles. In fact, Eastern Qi did not even have any troops stationed here. They had only left 10,000 people here as a symbol, but in reality, they were just there to show off. This was not because the people of the Eastern Qi imperial court had neglected their duties, but because they knew that even if they sent troops here, it would be useless. The enemy would not attack from here. There were dense forests everywhere in the 100,000 mountains. It was fine for a single person or a small group to travel alone, but if there were a lot of people, they would inevitably be squeezed in the dense forest. Moreover, Eastern Qi was not the least bit afraid of West Chu attacking. Of the 3 countries in the world, West Chu was the least ambitious, and it could be said that West Chu was the weakest. This land had been conquered countless times, but each time West Chu was able to establish a country, it was always a passive defensive role. They rarely attacked other countries. It wasn't that West Chu didn't want to, it was that West Chu couldn't do it. The entire West Chu martial arts world was not weak, but there were too few people in the country and most of it was barren mountains and forests. Not to mention it was not as prosperous as Eastern Qi, it couldn't even compare to Northern Yen. The land was sparsely populated and barren, so the possibility of West Chu ruling the world was zero. Therefore, the West Chu imperial family could only play 2 sides. They would see which side was stronger, Northern Yen or Eastern Qi, and then they would help the other side, fighting to the end. Of course, although the southwest was close to West Chu, the atmosphere was completely different. The people of the southwest were all fierce, and this was reflected in the local martial arts world. The 5 sects, 8 families, 11 schools, and 23 strongholds were the most powerful forces in the southwest. Regardless of whether they were strong or weak, each of them had the experience of exterminating an entire family. It could be imagined just how cruel the southwest was. Chapter 454. The Southwest Ironsword clan was located in the southwest Ssangyang Prefecture and could be considered as one of the largest sects in the southwest. The Ssangyang Prefecture was one of the few large prefectures in the southwest. The fact that the Ironsword clan could establish a sect in the Ssangyang Prefecture was enough to prove their strength. It had to be known that it was extremely difficult for a desolate place like the southwest to produce a martial Dao grandmaster. For Ironsword sect to have an expert like Zheng Tiantu, who had already stepped into the half-step martial Dao grandmaster realm, was already very impressive. Moreover, even if there was a martial Dao grandmaster in the southwest, most of them would not be able to stay. Those martial Dao grandmasters would either choose to wander in the Central Plains or move their sects to the Central Plains. They would not continue to stay in a remote and desolate place like the southwest. Zheng Tiantu already had this idea. He was in the prime of his life and it was possible for him to step into the realm of martial Dao grandmaster in the future. Therefore, Zheng Tiantu chose to accept the Crown Prince's invitation to prepare for the future. If he could really step into the realm of martial Dao Grandmaster in the future, he would prepare to move the Iron Sword clan to the Central Plains. However, he had no foundation in the Central Plains and was unfamiliar with the place. If he had the help of the Crown Prince, LV Longji, it would be much simpler. The southwest was still too small. Only the Central Plains was his goal. At this time, in the Iron Sword clan, Jing Tiantu was wiping a seemingly ordinary broad-bladed iron sword. Jing Tiantu was in his 60s this year. For someone of his realm, he was still in the prime of his life. In the past, he relied on this iron sword to lay the foundation of the Iron Sword clan. This ordinary iron sword was also continuously added with good materials and asked some master refiners to reforge it. Finally, an ordinary weapon was transformed into a precious weapon. However, the only thing Jing Tiantu was worried about now was his son. Zheng Qingyong's talent was not particularly good. Additionally, Zheng Tiantu had devoted himself wholeheartedly to the foundation of Iron Sword sect during Zheng Qingyong's youth. Thus, Zheng Tiantu neglected Zheng Qingyong's education, causing Zheng Qingyong to have many bad habits. Now that he was like this, how could Zheng Tiantu rest assured to pass the Iron Sword clan to him in the future? Therefore, this time, Zheng Tiantu sent Zheng Qingyong to Great Liang City, not only to see the sincerity of the Crown Prince, but also to let Zheng Qingyong get familiar with the Crown Prince, so that he could have a backer in the future. At this moment, someone outside reported that Zheng Qingyong had returned. Zheng Tiantu immediately asked someone to bring Zheng Qingyong in. With a smile on his face, he asked, "How's the scenery in Great Liang City? How does His Highness feel about you?" Zheng Qingyong put on a long face and said dejectedly, "Father, I've caused a huge disaster." Zheng Tiantu's expression suddenly changed and he quickly said, "What's going on? What did you do?" After Zheng Qingyong told Zheng Tiantu what had happened, Zheng Tiantu's face was as black as ink. He directly slapped Zheng Qingyong's face and scolded, "You're a useless thing." From childhood to adulthood, Zheng Tiantu spoiled Zheng Qingyong very much. He rarely hit him, but this time, Zheng Tiantu really couldn't help it. This idiot was obviously schemed against, causing their Iron Sword sect to be dragged into the struggle between the Crown Prince and the Second Prince. Moreover, flies don't bite seamless eggs. Now that Zheng Qingyong had fallen into this situation, it was completely his own fault. Zheng Tiantu asked him to go to Great Liang City to see the sincerity of the Crown Prince, and also to build a relationship with the Crown Prince. But in the end, he was actually eating, drinking, and sleeping with women in Great Liang City all day long. Zheng Qingyong didn't dare to refute after being slapped. He just covered his face and said pitifully, "Father, what should we do now? This matter has not been leaked yet. If the Crown Prince knows about it, we'll be finished." Zheng Tiantu thought for a moment, and he said in a deep voice, "The person who schemed against you said that he was the Second Prince's man?" Zheng Qingyong nodded again and again. Zheng Tiantu coldly snorted, "Now we don't know whether that person is the Second Prince's man or someone else. He just wants to provoke the relationship between the Second Prince and the Crown Prince. But there is still room for redemption. People say that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is broad-minded. If we tell the truth, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince should not blame us for this matter. He also knows that you are also a victim." Zheng Qingyong cautiously said, "But father, if His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is not broad-minded in this matter, what should we do?" Although Zheng Qingyong was an idiot waste, he also knew the truth of judging others by oneself. In any case, if someone dared to make him a cuckold, he would certainly want to tear that person's body into pieces. At that time, why would he care about whether that person was broad-minded or not? Zheng Tiantu sneered, "Those who can achieve great things should be able to endure things that ordinary people can't. Do you think His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is like you? Moreover, in other words, if the Crown Prince really blames our Iron Sword sect for this matter, then it proves that I was wrong about him. The Crown Prince is a narrow-minded person who disregards the overall situation for the sake of a woman. Such a person is not worthy of our Iron Sword sect to rely on. At that time, we can just look for the Second Prince to rely on." However, at this moment, a voice came from outside the door. Sect Master Zheng is indeed worthy of being called a veteran. You have thought things through clearly and are also very shrewd. Playing both sides, you won't suffer a loss. Unfortunately, Sect Master Zheng, you are a bit too shrewd. You don't know that when it comes to choosing sides, you can't stand on both sides. Chu Xiu pushed open the door and openly appeared in the room. The moment Zheng Qingyong saw Chu Xiu, his face suddenly revealed a trace of horror. He quickly shouted, "It's him! It's him!" Jing Tiantu's complexion slightly changed. Astral energy erupted from his body and he suddenly grasped the iron sword in his hand. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly took a step forward. This step was right beside the spot where Jing Tiantu's qi was about to erupt. If not for Chu Xiu's step, Jing Tiantu's sword would have already been unsheathed and slashed at that spot. Jing Tiantu's eyebrows furrowed. The moment the sword in his hand made a slight movement, he felt a strange qi enveloping him. It was as though no matter what he did, he would fall into the opponent's control. Within the narrow space of the room, the power of Chu Xiu's Heaven Sun gazing at air technique was displayed to its limit. Even Jing Tiantu, an expert who had already reached the half-step Grandmaster realm, was forced by Chu Xiu to the point where he did not dare to take action without permission. Jing Tiantu exhaled deeply and said in a cold voice, "Just who are you?" The person in front of him was so young and had such strength. He broke into the Iron Sword sect alone, and there was not even a trace of abnormality among his own disciples. Jing Tiantu believed that this person was definitely not a nobody. Chu Xiu faintly said, "My name is Chu Xiu. Sect leader Jing should have heard of my name. However, this is no longer important. Right now, I am only here on behalf of the second prince." Hearing the two words Chu Xiu, Jing Tiantu's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of seriousness. Unlike other Jianghu elders who did not care about the younger generation, Jing Tiantu believed that he was still in the prime of his life. Even though he was in the wilderness of the southwest, he was still very concerned about some of the news of the younger generation in Jianghu. There was no doubt that Chu Xiu had risen the fastest among the younger generation in Jianghu in the past few years. Although Chu Xiu was currently only at the 5 qis collecting in the Origin realm, the number of warriors at the oneness of heaven and man realm who had died in his hands was not just 1 or 2. At the very least, with the miraculous state of Chu Xiu just now, Jing Tiantu actually did not dare to act rashly. Jing Tiantu had already regarded Chu Xiu as an opponent of the same realm. Letting out a long breath, Jing Tiantu said coldly, "What is the second prince trying to do? My Iron Sword sect has not yet officially joined the Crown Prince's banner. You have already used these crafty plots to frame me. Are you trying to push me to the Crown Prince's side?" Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Sect leader Zheng, I have already appeared here. Is it interesting for you to still talk about these insincere things? A straightforward person will not resort to insinuations. I already know the choice your Iron Sword sect has made. Just now, you were still hesitating. Do you think I will believe what you said? At present, your precious son has touched the Crown Prince's woman. Even if the Crown Prince is truly magnanimous and forgives you in the future, when he looks at your Iron Sword sect, especially when he looks at your son, won't he feel uncomfortable? I believe that except for some people with special hobbies, being cuckolded is something that no man can endure. Besides, even if the Crown Prince really tolerates it, it is useless. Right now, only a few people know about this matter. If your Iron Sword sect wishes to join the Crown Prince, then I will spread this news. When that happens, you know the consequences." Jing Tiantu looked at Chu Xiu. A thick killing intent appeared in his eyes. He spat out the words through gritted teeth, "You are truly ruthless." If this news were to spread, Chu Xiu would be forcing the Crown Prince to kill them. It was not a glorious thing to be cuckolded. Even if the Crown Prince temporarily tolerated it for the sake of the overall situation, if this matter was spread out with great fanfare, the Crown Prince would kill them even if it was for his own reputation. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Sect leader Jing, forgive me for speaking bluntly. You chose to join the Crown Prince because you want to find a way out for Iron Sword sect and find a future for yourself. If that is all you seek, then there is not much difference between the Crown Prince and the second prince. The Crown Prince only has a righteous title. However, sect Master Jing thought about it carefully. Even if the crown prince was in the name of righteousness and the title of crown prince, the second prince was still able to share the limelight with the crown prince. From this point, the gap between the two could be seen. Would there really be a future for him to rely on such a person? Right now, the choice is in your hands. To join the crown prince or to join the second prince. Sect leader Jing, you can decide for yourself. Jing Tiantu narrowed his eyes and said, "Actually, I have a third choice." Choice? To kill you. Jing Tiantu clenched the iron sword in his hand and a strand of killing intent blossomed out from his body. As for Chu Xiu, there was a smile on his face. He said indifferently, "There are many who want to kill me in Jianghu. Unfortunately, most of them failed and died instead." Sect leader Jing, do you want to give it a try? Chapter 455. In the end, Jing Tiantu did not choose to make a move against Chu Xiu. First, things had already reached this point. Even if he killed Chu Xiu, it would be meaningless. The second prince would definitely have someone else to deal with this matter. Also, Jing Tiantu did not have much confidence in fighting against Chu Xiu. Although Jing Tiantu's realm far surpassed Chu Xiu's, if they were to really fight, Jing Tiantu couldn't say for sure how much combat power Chu Xiu, who was famous in Jianghu, could display. He was a cautious person and would rather believe in the saying that those with great reputations were not just for show. Putting down the iron sword in his hand, Jing Tiantu said dejectedly, "Now that things have already reached this point, do I have any other choice? But I want to know, what does the second prince want to do?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "The second prince's thinking is very simple. It's not that he wants to do something, it's that he doesn't want the crown prince to do something. Have the 5 schools, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds in the southwest all decided to join the crown prince?" Jing Tiantu shook his head and said, "Not really. Most of them are just watching. But like my Iron Sword sect, a well-known power in the southwest, they have already been contacted by the crown prince's people. Almost all of them have already decided to join the crown prince. In a month, the crown prince's people will personally come to the southwest goddess peak sky-gazing cave and gather the leaders of the 5 schools, 8 families, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds to participate in the alliance meeting. At that time, who will join the crown prince's side and who will remain neutral? Only at that time will it be clear." At this point, Jing Tiantu could not help but look at Chu Xiu and said, "The crown prince has been planning this for several months. You are only starting to stop him now, but it is already too late. Among the top sects in the southwest, many of them have already made up their minds to stand on the crown prince's side. Even if you plot against me now, it is useless. Even if my Iron Sword sect openly opposes it, the influence of my Iron Sword sect is limited among the dozens of powers in the southwest. The entire southwest will still belong to the crown prince. In fact, if Chu Xiu had not set up a trap for him, Jing Tiantu would not have joined the second prince. After all, the crown prince's people had already come many times and the conditions had already been discussed. They were just waiting for the alliance conference to officially submit to the crown prince's side. Now that he had been tricked by Chu Xiu, it was impossible for him to side with the crown prince, so he had no choice but to side with the second prince. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Too late? Not too late, just in time. Your Iron Sword sect is a great sect in the southwest region. It is only natural for you to know the details of the other forces. Tell me everything you know. You don't need to worry about the rest. All you need to know is which side you will stand on during the alliance meeting. That's enough." Jing Tiantu couldn't help but ask, "What do you want?" When Chu Xiu told him his plan, Jing Tiantu suddenly looked horrified. He couldn't help but say, "Madman! If you do this, do you know how many people will die in the southwest? Your methods are so cruel. When the time comes, will those sects be willing to serve the second prince?" Chu Xiu indifferently said, "You said it yourself. The alliance meeting will begin in a month. Since that's the case, I can only choose to use this method. To achieve great things, one shouldn't bother with trifles. In any case, if the second prince can't get it, the crown prince can't either. After receiving Zheng Tiantu's information, Chu Xiu immediately left. He wasn't really one of the second prince's people. What did it have to do with him whether or not the sects in the southwest were truly loyal to the second prince? Chu Xiu's goal was only to attack the crown prince and kill Li Yuan in passing. As for the other matters, they were just incidental. Because Eunuch Li and Fang Jinqi had brought their subordinates with them, they had to avoid the crown prince's eyes. Thus, their speed was rather slow. They only arrived 3 days later. At this time, Chu Xiu was very leisurely. Although the southwest was mostly filled with wild forests, it produced many good things. At this time, Chu Xiu was in a restaurant in the Cangyang Manor, drinking the southwest specialty, the 100-fruit wine, and tasting the strange delicacies here. Of course, in the eyes of outsiders, the delicacies here were somewhat ferocious. For example, there were some ferocious beasts that were rarely seen in the outside world, as well as some strange insects and snakes. These were all the specialty products of the southwest. Seeing Eunuch Li and Fang Jinqi arrive, Chu Xiu called out to them and said, "Eunuch Li, Lord Fang, quickly come and try these delicacies of the southwest. Although they don't look good, they're still very good to eat." Eunuch Li was in no mood to taste the delicacies. After seeing Chu Xiu, he didn't even sit down and immediately asked, "Official Chu, how is it? Did the Iron Sword sect agree to stand on the second prince's side?" Chu Xiu poured a cup of wine for the two of them and said, "I have good news and bad news here. Which one would you like to hear, Eunuch Li?" Eunuch Li frowned and said, "All right." Chu Xiu said, "The good news is that the Iron Sword sect has been settled. They will firmly stand on the second prince's side. Otherwise, the only ending for them is death." "Then what's the bad news?" Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "The bad news is that the crown prince has been planning in the southwest for a longer time than we imagined. He has even made contact with some of the top-ranking factions of the pugilistic world in the southwest. In less than a month, the crown prince will send people to the southwest to participate in the alliance meeting. At that time, the 5 clans, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds will all come to confirm that the entire southwest is under the crown prince's command. Since the crown prince is so confident, then all the factions similar to the Iron Sword sect should be preparing to join the crown prince's side. People tend to follow blindly. When the time comes, this group of people will speak up together, and the other factions will definitely follow suit." Hearing this, Eunuch Li immediately said anxiously, "Then you're still in the mood to drink and eat here? Why don't you hurry up and think of a countermeasure?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Eunuch Li, don't be anxious. We already have a countermeasure, but it's a little intense. I'm afraid that it will affect His Highness the Second Prince's reputation." Eunuch Li frowned and said, "What plan?" Chu Xiu said gravely, "The plan is actually very simple. Pull in one group and kill another. When the time comes, the factions in the southwest will fight amongst themselves. Then, with the power we brought, we can guarantee that the crown prince's plan will be completely ruined. However, there is less than a month left. If we want to get a sect like Iron Sword sect to stand on our side, one is possible. However, getting 2 is quite taxing. There is not enough time for us to lay out our plans. Thus, my methods will have to be more intense. Those forces that I forcibly pull over may not be loyal to the second prince. So, whether we do this or not is up to Eunuch Li and Lord Fang to decide." Fang Jinqi didn't say anything. In reality, under the second prince's command, he only cared about killing people and didn't touch anything else. Eunuch Li was the second prince's personal eunuch, so he naturally had to make the decision. Eunuch Li thought for a moment, then clenched his teeth and said, "Since official Chu is confident, then we'll go according to official Chu's plan. Fang Jinqi and I will support you from the side." A smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. This was exactly what he wanted to hear from Eunuch Li. This way, if something happened in the future, he wouldn't be able to blame it on Chu Xiu. 5 factions, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds. Chu Xiu couldn't deal with them one by one, so he only needed to find one clan for each of them. This time, Chu Xiu chose Maple Valley's Lu clan. Maple Valley was quite famous in the southwest. It was filled with maple trees, and every autumn, Maple Valley would be covered in maple red. However, it was midsummer now, so Chu Xiu and the others wouldn't be able to see such beautiful scenery. Chu Xiu led Eunuch Li and Fang Jinqi directly into Maple Valley. He asked to see the Lu clan's patriarch by name, but he didn't even say who he was. Originally, the Lu clan's disciples guarding the door didn't want to let Chu Xiu and the others in. However, as Eunuch Li and Fang Jinqi released their Unity of Heaven and Man Realm aura, the Lu clan's patriarch personally came out to welcome them and politely invited the three of them into the meeting hall. There were no martial Dao grandmasters in the southwest, and Unity of Heaven and Man Realm martial artists were considered experts. Even the Lu clan had to treat two Unity of Heaven and Man Realm martial artists with caution. In the Lu clan's meeting hall, the Lu clan's patriarch, Lu Ji, was an old man in his 80s. He hadn't stepped down from the position of patriarch at such an old age because the next generation of the Lu clan was somewhat disappointing. He could only continue to hold the position of patriarch for the time being and see if he could find a suitable successor while he was still alive and had the strength. Lu Ji said with a smile, "May I ask your esteemed names, and why have you come to my Maple Valley's Lu clan?" Chu Xiu pointed at Eunuch Li and Fang Jinqi and said with a smile, "This is the second prince's personal eunuch chief, Eunuch Li. This is the Dragon Riders' Imperial Army's Breaking Vanguard Battalion's general, Lord Fang Jinqi." When Lu Ji saw that Chu Xiu, who had the lowest realm among the three, spoke first, he felt a little strange. However, when Chu Xiu revealed Fang Jinqi's and Eunuch Li's identities, Lu Ji secretly cursed. He knew about the matter between the Crown Prince and the Second Prince. Now that the Second Prince's people had come to find him, Lu Ji didn't need to think to know that this was not a good thing. Therefore, Lu Ji immediately forced a smile and said, "The three of you," however, before Lu Ji could finish, he was interrupted by Chu Xiu. "Patriarch Lu, you don't need to say more. I know what you want to say." As he spoke, Chu Xiu began to take out the things from the secret box. Of course, they were not his own things, but the things he had asked from Eunuch Li. This is the 6th Revolution Cultivation Technique, Heart-Nourishing Formula of Tao. It is a Taoist secret manual that can cleanse one's marrow and nourish one's foundation. I heard that Patriarch Lu's descendants are a little weak, so this cultivation technique is just right. There are also 10 bottles of 6th Revolution medicinal pills, 500 taels of purple gold, and 10 5th Revolution precious weapons produced by the Divine Weapon Pavilion. After taking out these things, Chu Xiu stared at Lu Ji and said lightly, "Patriarch Lu, this is a gift from the Second Prince. If you accept it, your Lu clan will be the Second Prince's friend. If you refuse, I will slaughter your Lu clan according to the value of these gifts." Patriarch Lu, do you think that all the lives of your Lu clan added up are worth these gifts? Will there be any survivors? Chapter 456. Everyone had seen threatening people before. Whether it was the head of the Lu family, Lu Ji, Eunuch Li, or Fang Jinqi, they were all experienced people, so they were no strangers to such matters. However, they had never seen someone threaten someone as fresh and refined as Chu Xiu. Furthermore, Chu Xiu's threat was no longer a threat. It was more like an ultimatum. Lu Ji's old face turned red. Of course, this was not because he was excited, but because he was angry. How was Chu Xiu's actions any different from a bandit's? Was this considered gifting? It was more like throwing his life away. However, Lu Ji really didn't know what to say, as this was a single-choice question. Lu Ji would normally be overjoyed as he looked at the gifts on the table. However, at this moment, these things only made him feel like his hands were scalding hot, as if they were going to take his life. He had already promised the Crown Prince. Was he going to betray him now? Of course, if he didn't betray him, then these gifts to bribe him would become money that could take his life. Lu Ji had been in the southwest for decades and had experienced countless killings. He could see a hint of killing intent in Chu Xiu's eyes. It was an indifferent killing intent. People with such eyes wouldn't take human life seriously. They were even more terrifying than those ferocious-looking people who threatened to kill at every turn. Thus, Lu Ji believed that if he refused, the other party would really slaughter the Lu family with his men. Meeting Chu Xiu's indifferent gaze, Lu Ji smiled bitterly as he put away the gifts one by one. If the Crown Prince's men were in the southwest, he would still have the intention of asking for reinforcements. However, the Crown Prince's men would only arrive a month later. By then, the Crown Prince's men would probably only be able to collect his corpse. A smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. A wise man submits to circumstances. Lu family head, you are a wise man. On the day of the meeting, you should know which side you are on. After saying that, Chu Xiu left with Eunuch Li and Fang Zhenqi, leaving behind Lu Ji, who wore a complicated expression. After leaving the Lu family's residence, Eunuch Li asked doubtfully, Official Chu, will the Lu family really stand on our side after accepting the items? What if they go back on their words? Chu Xiu laughed coldly and said, Go back on my word? He wouldn't dare. If he accepted our things, he would be betraying the Crown Prince. Even if he immediately explained to the Crown Prince, the impression of him as a traitor would remain in the Crown Prince's heart. Even if the Crown Prince said that he trusted him, does Lu Ji dare to completely trust the Crown Prince? Chu Xiu's words were like a tongue twister, but Eunuch Li and Fang Zhenqi were not stupid, so they immediately understood. That was indeed the case. If Lu Ji were to betray them after accepting their items, he would not be able to please either side. He would offend both the Crown Prince and the Second Prince. At that time, as long as one of them was enraged, no one would be able to help him. Thinking of this, Eunuch Li also subconsciously glanced at Chu Xiu. It had to be said that this Chu Xiu was really ruthless. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. As long as he found the right target, he would be able to deal with a big power in a day. Less than a month's time was more than enough for them. Although the process was indeed unpleasant to hear, and Lu Ji must be cursing the three of them in his heart, that wasn't important. The result was the most important. Chu Xiu looked to the east and said in a deep voice, The next one is the Grey Sword sect of Mount Diansong. But before that, I'll have to trouble the two of you to act as the kidnappers. Eunuch Li frowned and said, Kidnap who? The three sons of the sect master of the Grey Sword sect, wind-chasing divine sword, Han Qianting. According to the information I obtained from the Iron Sword sect, his three sons are unwilling to cultivate in Mount Diansong. Every month they would go out for a day to play. Make use of this one day to kidnap these three people without alerting anyone. Only the two of you will be able to do it. Eunuch Li and Fang Zhenqi were somewhat resistant to Chu Xiu's task. After all, they were also people with status, but now they had to act as kidnappers. It was really degrading. However, the most important thing at the moment was to destroy the Crown Prince's plan. They couldn't care less and could only do as he said. 5 days later, in the Grey Sword sect of Mount Diansong, the sect master of the Grey Sword sect, Han Qianting, stood on the cliff at the back of Mount Diansong with a frown. Although his three sons were disappointing, they knew their priorities. Usually, they would go down the mountain to play and come back in a day. But now, it had been 2 days and not even a shadow was seen. Mount Diansong is a famous mountain in the southwest. But I think with Sect Master Han's mood, you probably don't have time to appreciate the scenery of Mount Diansong. What a pity! The moment he heard this voice, Han Qianting was shocked. He looked at the young cultivator who suddenly appeared behind him and shouted, How did you get in here? Mount Diansong was easy to defend but difficult to attack. Other than a small path up the mountain, it was surrounded by cliffs. This was the forbidden area of the Grey Sword sect's back mountain. Only the Grey Sword sect's disciples were qualified to enter. How did this stranger get past the interrogation of so many Grey Sword sect's disciples and enter this place? Chu Xiu walked forward step by step. For a sect of the Grey Sword sect's level, it was fine if they didn't have a martial Dao Grandmaster guarding it. They didn't even have a formation. With Chu Xiu's current mental strength cultivation, it was not difficult to enter such a place. Making a shushing gesture at Han Qianting, Chu Xiu indifferently said, Sect leader Han, lower your voice. Don't draw others here. Could it be that you don't want the lives of your 3 sons anymore? As he said this, Chu Xiu took out 3 jade pendants. These jade pendants were blood red in color and looked very magnificent. These 3 pieces of blood jade were gifts from Han Qianting to his 3 sons. They could nourish their blood and qi. The shape was personally carved by him, so Han Qianting could almost recognize them at a glance. These were his sons' things. Han Qianting's expression suddenly changed and he shouted in a low voice, "What did you do to my 3 sons?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Nothing, I just invited them to be guests. But I can't guarantee what will happen to them in the future. It all depends on Sect Master Han's attitude." Han Qianting said angrily, "The rule of the pugilistic world is that one shouldn't implicate family members." "Or you shouldn't implicate family members?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Sect Master Han, you're wrong. Pulling one hair will affect the whole body. When you make a decision, you and your family will be implicated. So, as a person, it's best to be more cautious. As for who I am, that's not important. All you need to know is that I'm the 2nd prince's man. That's enough." Han Qianting instantly understood everything, coldly saying, "The 2nd prince is a dignified prince. I didn't expect him to be so despicable." Chu Xiu shrugged, not minding it. In any case, Han Qianting was scolding the 2nd prince, not him. Looking at Han Qianting, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Sect Master Han, calm down. Some things aren't bad. As far as I know, Sect Master Han's 3 young masters aren't very talented. In your lifetime, will the next generation of the Blue Point Sword sect be inherited by your 3 young masters?" This was an unknown factor. A sect is not an aristocratic family, and the Blue Point Sword sect doesn't belong to you alone. For the benefit of the entire Blue Point Sword sect, is it worth it to abandon your own son? Han Qianting gritted his teeth. "What does the 2nd prince want?" Chu Xiu waved his hand. "It's simple. In a month's time, the Blue Point Sword sect will stand on the 2nd prince's side. There's no need for Sect Master Han to worry. Your 3 sons are safe and there are experts guiding them on the martial Dao. After the matter is settled, the 3 young masters will definitely return safely to Gray Point Mountain. Moreover, if Sect Master Han needs it, the 2nd prince will also support Sect Master Han in the future, allowing one of your 3 young masters to smoothly inherit Gray Point Sword sect." Han Qianting's expression flickered, but Chu Xiu didn't say anything. He only lightly said, "There's no need for Sect Master Han to be in such a hurry to make any promises. When the time comes for the Blue Point Sword sect's meeting, we'll see how you perform. In any case, as long as Sect Master Han remembers one thing, the lives of your 3 sons are in your hands." With that said, Chu Xiu directly turned and descended the mountain, not bothering to look at Han Qianting's expression. Chu Xiu was 90% sure that Han Qianting would choose to agree. The difference between a sect and an aristocratic family was that an aristocratic family was made up of bloodlines. One's loss was shared, and one's glory was shared. On the other hand, a sect was biased towards the individual. Han Qianting was only the sect master of the Blue Point Sword sect, but the Blue Point Sword sect didn't represent Han Qianting. Which was more important, his own son or the future of the sect? In the intelligence Zheng Tianti gave to Chu Xiu, this sect Master Han wasn't the kind of heroic person who would sacrifice himself for the sect. On the contrary, he had always wanted his son to inherit the position of sect master. After descending Blue Point Mountain, Eunuch Li and Fang Jinqi were waiting for him. "Is the matter settled?" Eunuch Li asked. Chu Xiu nodded. "Rest assured, Eunuch Li. I won't make a move unless I have absolute confidence. Now there's only one left. Just pick one from the 23 strongholds." Eunuch Li's expression was somewhat gloomy. "How are you going to make a move this time? Don't tell me you want us to go kidnap again?" Chu Xiu shook his head. "No need. This time it's very simple. Just throw money at them. Most of the bandits in the 23 strongholds are a motley crew. What they want is very simple, and that's profit. Moreover, the Crown Prince himself doesn't pay much attention to these bandits. He doesn't put as much effort on them as the people from the Iron Sword sect. So as long as we throw money at them, we can directly throw a stronghold that will submit to the 2nd prince." Uniquely frowned, but is throwing money at them reliable? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. Of course they are reliable. Bandits are just greedy, not idiots. Since we can bribe them with so much money, it means that we can also take out the same amount of money to slaughter them. Chapter 457. The martial arts forces in the southwest were generally not strong, and the bandits were a motley crew. In fact, the existence of the bandits in the southwest was longer than that of the local martial arts forces. After all, this place was originally desolate, and it was only when the trade route was opened that it became somewhat populated. And where there was a trade route, there was no lack of people, and that was bandits. However, these bandits did not have any plans, and most of them had an attitude of muddling through, and they even killed each other. So after so many years, there was no bandit force that could be used, and most of them were still just a motley crew. However, when one thought about it, it made sense. Bandits were inherently weak. The rise of the 36 great bandits of the northern lands was already a rare occurrence for thousands of years. As for the bandits of other places, they could only be considered small skirmishes. Chu Xiu and uniquely chose Qingfeng's stronghold, one of the stronger of the 23 strongholds. The leader of the Qingfeng stronghold, the smiling scholar, Song Qian, was also interesting. Not only did he look like a scholar, but he was also a scholar. It was said that in his early years, Song Qian was just a scholar. He was so poor that he had no money to study, so he could only run to work as an accountant for a caravan. In the end, he was robbed by bandits on the way, and he was taken by the bandits to work as an accountant for the stronghold. Later, because he gave the stronghold a good idea, it caused the stronghold's power to soar. Song Qian also changed from an accountant to a military advisor, and he also got the opportunity to practice martial arts. Moreover, Song Qian did not expect that a weak scholar like him would have such a good talent in martial arts, and it only took him more than 20 years to reach the realm of the unity of heaven and man. So he found an opportunity to directly kill the previous stronghold master, and renamed the stronghold to Qingfeng's stronghold until today. This time, when Chu Xiu and the others arrived at Qingfeng's stronghold and felt the strength of the three, Song Qian directly came out to greet them. Although he had become a stronghold master, Song Qian still wore a scholar's robe, and with his elegant appearance, at this time, he did not look like a bandit leader, but more like a teacher. May I know why the three of you came to my Qingfeng stronghold? Did my subordinates steal your goods by mistake? Don't worry, I'll get someone to send it back right away. I'll also send a gift as an apology. Song Qian cupped his hands politely and his attitude was very humble. Some of the caravans traveling to the southwest could move, while others could not. For example, the merchant caravans from the major factions had strong defenses. Not to mention whether they could even touch them, even if they did, the other party would take revenge on them in the future. Therefore, the bandits of the 23 strongholds changed very quickly. Who knew if there would be a day when someone else would directly break into the stronghold and exterminate the entire clan? Because of this, after Song Qian became the fort master, he set down a rule that he would only rob and not kill. He could not go to the extreme. Moreover, he couldn't use it immediately after he stole it. Instead, he had to store it for a few months. When he saw that no one came for revenge, he could then spend it. If someone came, then he would lower his stance, return the item, and apologize. Anyway, to bandits like them, face was not something they could eat, so what was the use of having him? Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Het Song guessed wrong. We are not here to ask for something, but to deliver something." As he said this, Chu Xiu began to take out the purple gold from the outside, piece by piece. Needless to say, this scene was quite shocking. At least to a bandit leader like Song Lian, he had never seen so much purple gold in his entire life. He had quite a lot of ordinary gold and silver items, but purple gold could be used to set up matrices and forge weapons. It was definitely a hard currency. Ordinary small aristocratic families would at most have a few dozen taels of purple gold. For someone like Chu Xiu to take it out and place it on the table piece by piece, it was quite shocking. Moreover, To be honest, even Chu Xiu himself was moved by this purple gold. Even the annual tax revenue of the Guangxi region was not this much. A prince was a prince, after all, especially a prince like the second prince who held real power and had the chance to ascend to the throne in the future. Their foundations were not ordinary. After taking out 10 purple gold bricks in a row, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Headsong, these are gifts from the second prince. I wonder if these things are enough for Headsong to stand on the second prince's side? Of course, if Headsong says it's not enough, I still have more here." Song Lian swallowed his saliva, his eyes almost imprinted on the purple gold bricks. Song Lian was indeed shocked when he heard about the second prince, but he quickly regained his composure. Whether it was the crown prince or the second prince, the most important thing was to be able to obtain benefits. Moreover, it was indeed as Chu Xiu had guessed. The crown prince did not spend too much effort on the bandits of the 23 strongholds. Compared to some other powers, the 23 strongholds had the most bandits, but they were still a motley crew. The crown prince, LV Longji, had an innate dislike for these bandits. Furthermore, as long as the sects in the southwest agreed to pledge their allegiance to the crown prince, it was no longer important whether these bandits pledged allegiance or not. In any case, they would not be able to cause much trouble. Thus, Eunuch Chen and Li Yuan, the crown prince's trusted aides, did not even personally come to the 23 strongholds. They only sent a few ordinary subordinates to discuss the conditions with the bandits and give them some things before leaving. Even if Song Lian and the other bandits of the 23 strongholds were dissatisfied, it was useless. Once the other powers of the martial arts world agreed, if the bandits of the 23 strongholds wanted to cause trouble, the local martial arts world powers would probably be enough to take care of them all before the crown prince even made a move. Thus, after Chu Xiu took out so many purple gold bricks, Song Lian did not even need to think about it and immediately leaned towards the second prince's side. As for Chu Xiu asking him if it was enough, although Song Lian thought that he would never complain about having too many purple gold bricks, he still forced his gaze away from the purple gold bricks and said with a dry laugh, "It's enough. Of course it's enough." He was not an idiot and knew what the consequences of being insatiably greedy were. 10 purple gold bricks were enough to buy the entire Qingfeng stronghold. If he were to be even more greedy and take the opportunity to extort money from the second prince, the consequences would probably not be good. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "It's good that it's enough. Headsong, you should know what to do at the alliance meeting in a month's time." Song Lian hurriedly nodded and said, I know. Please rest assured. The second prince is so generous. Although I am a bandit, I also know the word trustworthy. I will definitely not let your highness down." Chu Xiu nodded and turned to leave. Eunuch Li and Fang Zhenqi, who were behind him, looked at each other. They also did not dare to believe that the matter had been settled so easily. Wasn't this a little too fast? Fang Zhenqi was on a mission to kill people, so he was only slightly surprised by the amount of time Chu Xiu had used. However, Eunuch Li was different. He had been by LV Longguang's side for a long time. Although he was not the most capable subordinate of LV Longguang, he was the person LV Longguang trusted the most. He had participated in many secret missions and carried out many of them. He could also use the methods that Chu Xiu had used. Other than the time when he had tricked Zheng Qingyong, the other methods did not require much skill. However, what was truly terrifying about Chu Xiu's methods was that he had a grasp of the human heart. When faced with different people, he could use the most suitable methods to make them submit. This was the most terrifying thing. No one was invulnerable. As long as these people had the slightest flaw, they would be caught by Chu Xiu. Then he would use the most suitable method to defeat them one by one. After dealing with these people, Chu Xiu, Eunuch Li, and the others went into hiding in the southwest. A month later, Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen also brought people to the southwest. This time, many of the crown prince's subordinates had come. Other than Li Yuan and Eunuch Chen, there were also 3 experts at the unity of heaven and man realm. They were all guests that the crown prince had recruited. Once again coming to the southwest, Li Yuan felt rather high-spirited. The main people in charge of recruiting and subduing these people in the southwest were Li Yuan and Eunuch Qin. If this matter was done well, his status in the eyes of the crown prince would definitely rise by a large margin. After arriving in the southwest, Li Yuan did not delay. He directly sent invitations to the people of the 5 clans, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds, asking them to come to the Goddess Peak's heaven-gazing cave to participate in the alliance meeting. The Goddess Peak was very famous in the southwest. Legend had it that in ancient times, a goddess had ascended here, which was why it was named the Goddess Peak. As for the heaven-gazing cave, it was a cave in the Goddess Peak. Because there was a huge opening at the top, one could see the sky if they raised their heads, which was why it was called the heaven-gazing cave. At this moment, the huge cave had already been tidied up neatly. The leaders of the 5 clans, 8 clans, 11 sects, and 23 strongholds were all gathered here. They were seated according to their respective power rankings. Li Yuan, Eunuch Qin, and the others stood in the center. After everyone had arrived, Li Yuan cupped his hands towards the people present and said, "Everyone, although the southwest is desolate and barren, it is still the territory of the Deqi kingdom. Everyone started from scratch. It was not easy for you to establish such a foundation in the southwest. I am very impressed. Now that His Highness the Crown Prince has the mandate of heaven, he will ascend to the throne in the future. Therefore, we have prepared to invite all the outstanding talents of the Jianghu in the southwest to jointly raise the prestige of the Deqi kingdom." Li Yuan spoke passionately, and there was some applause from below. However, Li Yuan still felt that something was wrong. Why were the reactions of some of the people below not so intense? Since they had already come to participate in the alliance meeting, could it be that they still had some doubts about this matter? However, at this moment, a sneering voice came from outside. They started from scratch and accumulated such a large family property, but the crown prince took it all away with a single sentence. He even glorified it by raising the prestige of the Deqi kingdom. Could it be that the crown prince is preparing to lead these warriors of the southwest to attack the northern Yen? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.